Chapter 21-28. Bai Gu thought to himself and said, "The current Zhuangzi pays taxes every year, and the previous imperial court rents the same year. Since ancient times, the emperor must be removed first." "Longzhe, don't talk too much." Zhang Shua nodded to the little robot that delivered the skewers. The imperial court once collected the rent, but it was not enough. The Li family Zhuangzi pays taxes, and he still has profits. I can't bear to remove him. Brother Yi's money is there, and the imperial court can use it at any time. How can I remove him? Zhuangzi makes money, and the imperial court's finances are even richer. It must be earned by Zhuangzi. My ancestors said that Brother Su met me in the Tang dynasty. He went to Mount Tai to worship his ancestors. Li Longji first gave the credit to his ancestors, and then thought about going to Mount Tai to play. Your Majesty is merciful, the officials shouted tacitly. Next year, there will be water in the Yellow River, and it will be convenient to go by water. It will be far to go by land to Mount Tai. The little robot that delivered the fish skewers to Lu Huaishan also joined in the fun. There was no water in the Yellow River, and it would be 1,600 to 1,700 miles to go by land. Go fry the skewers. Here dried tofu. Li Riji picked up 6 skewers of dried tofu and put them on the tray. It's already far to go now. The matters in Hunan have not been settled, and it's almost the new year. The little robot carried the tray and left muttering. Li Longji nodded. The river will open next year. This year, Brother Yi has a lot of things to deal with. We can't add to the chaos. There are also scenic spots nearby. Bai Gu suggested. He used to go to Mount Song. Yes, Mount Song is more than 100 miles away from Luoyang Palace. Zhang Shua confirmed. Mount Song is good. Half of the Mount Song temple's property belongs to Dongzhu. Dongzhu wants to take it over. It's on the way. The little robot carried the chicken skewers to the place and put the tray. You came back as soon as you turned around? Where's my dried tofu? Li Riji did not see what he wanted to fry. I'm the other one. Who wants to fry something? The little robot replied. I remember that there's bean skin that can be boiled. Put it in cold noodle soup with cucumber shreds, sesame and chili noodles. Lu Yochio brought the tray over. He wanted to eat chicken skewers and asked again. There is. Want one? The little robot said cutely. I want one. I want one. Okay. One for each person. Li Longji finally said. Okay. The little robot turned around and left. How nice would it be to have one at home? Yin Xijin, who was also in the group, also wanted to make her presence known. Exchanging life for life. Good things are indeed expensive. Lu Chong stared at the little robot that came over again. The Li family Zhuangzi's matter has been spread throughout the world, but there are still some families that are unwilling to accept this and want to go against the heavens. He didn't have a good impression of those families, and he was almost poisoned to death. Everyone continued to chat. They ate very little skewers and only had a bowl of wine. They talked about everything, but they didn't talk about who was behind this. Everyone knew that they wouldn't be able to find out. The people who were involved in the communication were probably buried in a pit. The matter was handled smoothly, so there was no need to do anything for the time being. If it was the assassin monarch, there would be no need for evidence. They would rather kill 1,000 innocents than let a single one escape. Coupled with Li Yi's lie detection skills, it was guaranteed that they would be able to find the culprit. Obviously, the person who acted in the dark knew how to act appropriately. Otherwise, wouldn't it be better if they directly incited people to attack the Li family Zhuangzi? Why not? Because they knew that if they did, they would die without a doubt. The sky was just beginning to brighten. Some of the people were already asleep. They were wearing the hoodies that the Li family Zhuangzi sent, and their legs were covered with blankets. When they left, they brought the clothes and blankets home and sent them off. Some continued to watch the program. They wanted to watch enough. Normally, they didn't dare to enter Sigong Square. At this moment, the beauties of Pyongkong Square, Sigong Square, and Pear Garden were dancing and singing together. When could they not sleep? How many hours did they miss? In the morning, it was still wontons with egg and cucumber fillings for the monks who didn't eat meat. They just happened to eat the unfinished pancakes with smoked sausages. Li Longji and the others were preparing to sleep. They talked about a lot of things and made clear that the emperor's important speech was the guiding principle, and Li Yi's support was the unified ideological line. It laid the foundation for the future development of the Tang dynasty, pointed out the direction in which the Tang dynasty would continue to grow, and verified the correctness of the Li family Zhuangzi's model. This was a great chat. This was a chat of victory. This was a chat that would be engraved in the annals of history. The people who participated in the chat were Bai Gu, the Minister of Revenue of the Secretariat of the Central Secretariat, and Song Jing, the Minister of Appointments of the Central Secretariat. In addition, the little robots 015, 033, and so on also participated and spoke. Then Li Yi woke up and gave everyone porridge and pickles. Go to sleep after eating. I'll deal with today's memorials first. You can write them when you wake up. Thank you, Xiao Yi. Bai Gu was not polite. Gang Ro, you can print a copy according to our instructions. You can print it directly. We don't have to look at it. Zhang Juling was really sleepy. She felt that she could sleep for a day and a night. Okay. Li Longji yawned. If it weren't for Brother Yi's request to eat porridge, he would have fallen asleep right now. Su Yi and Song Jing didn't have any objections. Why were they so sleepy today? After eating porridge with everyone, they went back to the cabin to rest. Li Yi thought for a while and said, I'll go take a bath. I'll read the memorials in Zhuangzi. Little robots help look after them. The food they eat is drugged. Don't fall asleep, and the food will backflow and block their respiratory tract. He drugged others. Otherwise, they would be too excited and would not feel sleepy at noon. They could even endure at night. It was too harmful to the body. After eating the medicine, they would be sleepy, right? This meant that the medicine was not fake. Therefore, they had to eat porridge. After the commoners finished eating, some continued to sleep while waiting for the train to pick them up. Some excitedly sat on the first train and chatted with their fellow passengers about which beauty was the prettiest. I think Xan Yan is prettier than Ziqi. Look at Xan Yan's face, that smile, and that chest. A man in his 20s said to the man beside him. As he spoke, he stretched out his hands as if to grab something. Is her butt nice? A voice came from the side. Nice. How should I say her butt? It's The man suddenly paused. The voice was female, and it sounded very familiar. He slowly turned his head and saw a woman around his age looking at him with her head tilted. Xiao Xiao, you came to watch the program too? The man's voice became softer and softer. I came to find you. There were many people before, but I couldn't find you. I just found you. The woman nodded. Xan Yan's, but is obviously infertile. She can't be compared to you. She can't be compared to you. The man continued the previous topic. What about her chest? The woman asked again. It's too big. It's not good. She can't be compared to you. She can't be compared to you. The man said again. You came here just to watch this? Praise other women? The woman was about to cry. No. Look, you have praised other people before. Li Dongzhu, have you praised him before? I said Li Dongzhu is good, because he can let us live a good life. That's right. It's not written in the newspaper. You praised Li Dongzhu because of material civilization. I said that other women who perform belong to spiritual civilization. I'm not marrying anymore. Go find your spiritual civilization. Can you find your material civilization? Yes. Look, I brought a basket. I didn't know you were coming. I couldn't find it when I went to your house. I left some pancakes for you when we were eating. The man picked up the basket beside him. I'll go out for a while. The man sitting beside him stood up. He did a good deed and let the two of them sit together. For smoking sausages? You didn't eat. Aren't you hungry? I didn't eat either. The man sat inside, and the woman sat down naturally. Chapter 21-29. The people left one after another. The monks and Taoists arranged for people to go back. They left on their own, and did not dare to take the train. Wasn't there a river? They had small boats on the river that they rowed. When they went back to report, they would see how to give the property, money, or the place. They had no choice but to give it. They had met a true God. The more they believed in Li Yi, the more they were afraid of him. They knew their own situation. They made arrangements here in advance and used a lot of manpower and material resources. Li Yi did not participate at all. The Li family Zhuangzi only sent people here when they had a stomachache. All their arrangements were not as shocking as the appearance of a true god. On a rainy day, they agreed to use the method in the shed. In the end, Li Yi directly used the thousands of Buddhas. It was raining. The rainbow in the river fell on the mountain top. The floating water stepped on the air. The image of the Tang dynasty's campaign, and the appearance of His Majesty when he was young. The Taoist's flying technique was powerful enough, right? Li Yi actually moved in a flash. When the Taoist's hanging rope slipped, Li Yi's shadow came to the rescue. This could not be rehearsed in advance, right? Li Yi could really move at will in an instant. Look at the Taoist priests digging here and there. The monks also helped to dig a few hundred feet of underground river. It was not easy to make a river, but it could not compare to Li Yi's clenched fist. It was too terrifying. They had to bow down. Li Yi was not human at all. Did they force a true god to reveal the secrets of heaven? No wonder Li Yi could translate so many scriptures and annotations. Some of the monks and Taoists wanted to leave by the river. The others stayed and waited for the train to send the rest of the people away. The people of Pyongkong Square, Sigong Square, and Pear Garden also wanted to take the train to Sigong Square. They had been communicating well recently. They went to take a look and help support the situation. The yacht was always there. Li Longji and the others were resting. The yacht could not leave directly. The yacht would only return when the last person left. If the yacht left first, the rest of the people would feel empty and afraid. The ink has already entered the water, crossing a pool of blue and white flowers, taking 5 parts of the red glow, picking bamboo to go home. If the mountains and rivers in my heart, your eyes can see them all, I will pray to a lotus flower with every step I take. How would I know that it is just a piece of grass? Time makes me grow old. The song and dance continued. This was the professional ethics of the Pear Garden, Pyongkong Square, and Sigong Square. As long as there was an audience, they could not stop. They couldn't leave the loneliness to the audience. They had to give the audience the feeling of an endless night. The fruit platter made by the master couldn't be touched easily. The leftovers were fine. However, when the private room was cleared, he went in with the others. Others were looking for things to eat. At first he didn't eat. Later he ate. He couldn't not eat. Everyone ate. Only he didn't eat. He usually ate fruits and cakes. He ate a few bites as a token of appreciation. It felt very distant. It was like a dream. If he thought too much, he wouldn't know which was the dream. Zhuang Shengxiao is obsessed with butterflies. Yishan is full of literary talent. It's a pity that the emperors of the past paid more attention to politics than literary talent. Li Yi took the memorial and prepared to read it. He sighed. Pursuing literary talent was better than pursuing politics, even for Su Shi. There was a saying that was passed down through the ages. The history of 10,000 years was only recorded in politics, including Li Bai and the others. The things passed down were for the common people. The real political figures read the historical records. Those in power never gave important tasks based on literary talent. After sighing, Li looked at the memorial and made comments. Life. This is life. Do I owe you? You sleep, I help you work. In the past, I wanted to participate to this extent, but others didn't let me. Now that I'm participating, why don't I feel happy? Li Yi forgot about the time, as if he was doing homework. The others left on the boat and train. The yacht turned back. At noon, Li Yi threw down his pen. It's all done. Are the local officials stupid? Or do they think the people in the imperial court are stupid? Li Lang, what's wrong? Princess Yongmu and Xiaolan pushed a cart in. There was a hot pot on it. Some officials think they're smart. They say they want to build roads. If you want to build roads, then so be it. Why did you say to guide the water? There are mountains all around. It's good enough that you can build a suspension bridge. You want to guide the water? Your place is more than 50 miles away from the nearest river. You want me to guide the water? How much money do I have to spend? How much manpower do I have to use to guide the water over? Why do I need to guide it over? Go around the Yangtze River? Wouldn't it be faster to build a land road? He thinks he's fooling the local officials. I'm in the imperial court and don't know the local situation? so he can make money from it. Li Yi was angry. It's not that you're wrong. You think I'm stupid? Do you think I'll give you money? Then what should we do? A voice sounded. Easy. Let him go to Luoyang to report and investigate him. This is a problem of how much money. I guarantee he's greedy. If old Bai knows. Old Bai. When did you come? Li Yi said angrily. He suddenly realized that the voice just now was Bai Gu's. Xiao Yi, you know this old man is tired, right? Bai Gu said as if he had done a lot. I know. Old Bai, let's swap. Chapter 2131. Everyone looked at Bai Gu. Why don't you just eat? Why are you raising a flag when you have nothing better to do? It wasn't easy for him to wait for a peaceful new year. But now it was all good. You can't even stop eating. It's a rare peaceful day. And you said that you've said something wrong with Long Yu Dao. What does it have to do with this old man? If this old man didn't say anything, would it not have happened? Bai Gu felt wronged. Sigh. Li Longji put down his chopsticks and looked at the little robot. Is it troublesome? It's a matter of money. You have to give me warmth. It was snowing heavily. Zhang Xiaosong said that he couldn't lead a team to harass Su Lu because the path to the prisoner exchange was blocked. The local people had already entered the city. Their communication with the outside world was temporarily cut off. They were afraid that the grain reserves would not be enough for them to dispatch. The elite cavalry set out in the snow to rescue the herdsmen, who were building tents in the east of the border town. Shattered Stone City has also sent people over. Most of the sheep will probably freeze and starve to death. The little robot answered the question seriously. There was a lot of content in the telegram, and the people in Zhuangzi had not finished translating it. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. They thought that the Abbasid Caliphate or the Abbasid Caliphate had suddenly attacked and occupied the area. Funding. Bai Gu was the first to speak, as if he was trying to make up for his mistake. He was confident and rich. Yao Chong was very envious. When he first became prime minister, he could only send a letter of consolation to the imperial court for similar matters, and then reduce the rent. There were many foreign races fighting in the area, and they didn't pay rent at all. There was no other way. The imperial court would send things over from other places, and the places that were sent over would have their rent reduced. Usually they wouldn't dare. As the imperial court didn't have the money, disasters are reduced here and there. Do the officials of the imperial court not need to eat? Things are different now. To be able to transport supplies from Chang and No, Luoyang to Long Yu Dao over a long distance, they didn't care how much they consumed on the way. The people who suffered the disaster did not complain that the imperial court was late in delivering things. They knew that the journey was long. Li Longji looked around and said, "Synchronize the transportation to all places." Turning his head, he looked at the little robot. "Tell them to pick up the things from the nearest place, and give orders to all the prefectures along the way to start transporting." Okay. The little robot's light flashed, sending telegrams to dozens of positions at the same time. Things were affected by the disaster in D, and C was transported to D. B was transported to C. A was transported to B. Li Yi was still hiding a bigger secret. His power is not in flying but in the people. The people of the Tang dynasty lit incense for his longevity tablet. That's right. Yi Fashion still looked at the problem from a higher perspective. It did not matter if Li Yi could fly or not. It was more important to let the people eat. Chapter 2133. In the afternoon, after the food had been digested, Li Yi brought the nurses and disciples to the hospital. If the people were sick, they would be treated. The imperial physicians and local medical practitioners would also provide free medical services. The local medical practitioners could earn money by selling medicine. When outsiders were sick, they could not bear to spend money to buy medicine. They would take it from the Li family Zhuangzi. The locals were rich. With the money they earned from farming and handicrafts, coupled with the high annual output of indica rice, their lives were better year by year. They did not drink unboiled water and wash their hands frequently. The transmission of germs was reduced, and fewer people fell sick. The monks and Taoists of Hunan province, who were stationed in the temple, hurriedly rushed back, followed by the people from the government and the Li family's manor. When they arrived, they seized the items and estimated their value so that they could share half with Li Yi. The monks and Taoists of the capital government changed into ragged clothes with many patches. Their sleeves, trousers, and robes were neatly packed. They volunteered to work. Yi Fashion, Shan Wuwei, Sima Qingzhen, and the other older people did not move. They stayed on Zhuangzi to recuperate. Yi Fashion said that he wanted to live a few more years. Yi Fashion was 103 years old this year. It was obviously not suitable for such a person to carry wood. In reality, monks and Taoists over 50 years old did not do manual labor. Some of them were responsible for continuing to translate sutras, while others were thinking of ways to preach. Yi Fashion was a mascot. He was over 100 years old and looked festive. When the little robot spoke to him, it never made him angry. Everyone read through the memorials. There were no areas that could be changed. They were distributed according to Li Yi's comments. An extra map was added to the receipt of Izhou, indicating the approximate location of coal mines. They could dig it themselves. The local people were ordered to first repair the road. Everyone contributed to the suspension bridge. The food was first provided. The canal went from Luoyang to the Yangtze River. The Yangtze River went upstream. When it reached the corresponding location of Izhou, the local people received their things. Tools for smelting iron, tools for daily use, food, cloth, salted duck and goose eggs, malaria pills, soap. Izhou had more than 1,000 households and less than 7,000 people. Izhou was not small. There were many local people. When Li Yi was there, most of the local area belonged to Junyi City. The number of ethnic minorities there. At present, the people of Izhou mainly lived in small groups. They did not enter their birthplace and could not be found in the books. God knew how many people there were. He had no place of origin, did not pay rent, and did not care about mediocrity. If they wanted to work in the area, they could only look for people with birthplace, which was not enough. Tell the officials of the state capital to make things clear with the locals. Give them some benefits, and everyone will repair the roads together. Once the roads are repaired, everyone will walk together. The Li family Zhuangzi of Chang and Baishui guaranteed that they would not lie, so don't worry. This local was indeed willing to cooperate. They were close to Yuzhou. Li Yi flew over to stabilize Wan Zhaoyuan's injuries. The news had already reached Yuzhou, and Yuzhou was cooperating with other places to mine coal and fish for gold. Dongzhu's pickled vegetables came from nearby Fuling, the key place where the Fuling River entered the Yangtze River. Many people saw the Tang Dynasty cruiser passing by, and Li Yi flying in the sky, picking stars to form characters. Tell the locals that they don't need to pay rent for the registration. Those who were originally registered will have to pay extra. He gave her tools and soap when she entered her hometown. He also gave her food and salted eggs from the Li family Zhuangzi to build a road for her. Li Yi wanted to see the specific number of people so that he could make follow-up arrangements. With the sudden increase of 100,000 people, Li Yi dared to throw over 100,000 yuan to help the local development and set an example for the surrounding areas. Guizhou province was located there, and the development speed was not fast enough. The tourism industry was on the rise, and it was not suitable for the Tang dynasty. Your Majesty, why don't you send a team of officials over? Take 20 out of the 220 students of the Li family Zhuangzi, and add other officials. Zhang Jiuling finished the last memorial he was responsible for, and suggested to Li Longji, who was reading on a tablet in the political affairs hall. Li Longji's fingers slid around the screen. Currency is giving me a headache. Take a break and read Journey to the West. As he spoke, he put the tablet into the drawer of the small robot, and the small robot began to charge the tablet. The local officials may be conflicted. Li Longji considered that the local officials would be unhappy if he sent a team of people. Zhang Jiuling continued. The number of households is increasing, and the way they are governed is different. Each place is dominated by strongholds, and they must be investigated on the spot. Li Longji muttered to himself for a moment. In that case, take the train from Chang'an to Luoyang. It's faster. Your Majesty, order them to take the road from Chang and then directly go south. They can't take a boat, and it will take too much time. Zhang Jiling suggested again that going with the goods was too slow. Li Longji nodded. Okay. Who will choose the other officials? Luoyang. Take 40 people who are most worried about the examination and go to Izhou. If the matter is done, they will be given important tasks, including registrars, county officials, county officers, and officials. After Zhang Jiling finished speaking, he looked at Song Jing. The transfer of officials needed Song Jing's support. Song Jing revised the memorial that Li Yi had annotated. He needed to polish it. When he heard Zhang Jiling's words, he gently put the revised book to the side and waited for the ink to dry before closing it. In passing, he put down the pen. If Li Yi personally goes, Izhou will have no worries. Li Longji was slightly stunned and then said, Brother Yi has no experience as an official. You are quite accomplished as the governor of Guangzhou. Your Majesty misunderstood. I was just saying that Li Yi is very capable. I think that Zhang Jiling's words are reasonable. Song Jing was shocked. He didn't want to be the provincial governor of a small province. It wasn't easy to govern. If he asked Li Yi to go, he would be at ease. He was right, wasn't he? Bai Go was anxious. Your Majesty, Guangping speaks without thinking. People like me who are old always want to guide the younger generation. However, I would rather have the younger generation by my side. In case of a headache or fever, the younger generation can also carry water. He reminded Song Jing that Xiao Yi was only good at governing. He was just as good at treating illnesses. Weren't you worried that he wouldn't be there when you were sick? Of course. I will choose people now. Song Jing didn't dare to say more. He needed someone to treat him, but the Emperor Emeritus and Empress Dowager needed it even more. Otherwise, why would everyone follow Li Yi wherever he went? Could it be that the Li family Zhuangzi wasn't comfortable living there? I agree. Sui saw everyone looking at him and quickly agreed. He didn't want to be the provincial governor either. A telegram was sent to Chang'an. 20 students from the second batch of the Li family Zhuangzi were selected to take their things to Izhou. Henan Prefecture selected 40 people. They had to be healthy and not fall sick. The specific situation wasn't mentioned during the selection, only Izhou. The selected officials would only know about it during dinner. The distance was far. A large box of things was sent to them as a settlement fee. It was the last night. They would depart the next morning. They would say what they needed to say to their wives quickly. The next morning, there was a car to pick them up. They didn't even have time for breakfast. The parting words were short. Whether it was laughter or tears, it didn't matter. At 9 o'clock in the morning, 4 officials gathered at the Li family Zhuangzi. Li Longji personally received them, but didn't say anything. After everyone finished their greetings, they felt uneasy. The officials were also silent. Li looked around and said, The first thing to do is to take care of your health. Communicate with colleagues from other places. There's no need to worry about safety. 200 of His Majesty's private soldiers will follow. Li Dongzhu? Who else? An official heard the words colleagues from other places and asked doubtfully. Some juniors. You all have rich experience. Teach them patiently, Li Yi replied. Where did they come from? They can't be too uneducated. I'm also a Jinshi second class. The official puffed out his chest. Chapter 2134. The other officials also raised their chins. Our evaluation is superior, so we need to have education and experience. You can't arrange for people who can't even read to follow us and ask us for help. The place is too remote, so it's not easy. Sigh. Li sighed. He was at a loss. Yao Chong couldn't stand it anymore. The second batch of students to enter Li family Zhuangzi will be 20 of the top 220 students. After becoming a grand scholar, you will first study, and then go to the villages to work with the village officials. You will start from the bottom when you enter the county government. You haven't learned well enough, so you will need to go to a distant place to continue learning from you. The 40 officials were speechless. Thank you, Li Dongzhu. The official who asked the question just now happily thanked him. He bowed and bowed again. Suddenly, someone grabbed his shoulder. He struggled twice but couldn't break free. He turned his head and saw that the other party was blind in one eye and had an unfriendly gaze. Communicate more, and you can't be indecisive. However, you can't be obstinate and self-opinionated. Li emphasized obstinate and self-opinionated. When you reach the place, you will cooperate with the students from Zhuangzi and assist them. Don't worry, Li Dongzhu. We promise not to cause trouble. Be obedient. The official was clever. The other officials were also happy. They thought that they would go to a remote place to suffer. But there were actually students from Li family Zhuangzi. Those students knew how to do all kinds of work, such as breeding, planting, simple crafting, trading. It wasn't easy for the imperial court to train one. No, it was not easy for the Li family Zhuangzi to train one. But they suddenly released 20 of them. They definitely weren't exiled. They looked at their colleagues, who were either superior in their evaluations. What's wrong with Izhou? Why did the imperial court send out such a lineup? As if guessing their thoughts, Li continued. There are many villagers in the area. And there are many conflicts between villages due to marriage. Getting them registered is a small matter. The stability of each village is the most important thing. As Li spoke, a palace made beside him handed out booklets to the officials, one for each person. There are strategies to deal with common situations, especially the feuds between villages. Learn well on the way. Li finished speaking and waved his hand. Goodbye. I won't be seeing you off. The officials bid farewell to Li Longji and the other ministers. And then they followed the 200 recruits to the canteen to eat first. Li stood up and was about to leave. He had come here mainly to deliver the booklet. Zhang Jueling had suggested sending officials, instead of preparing logistics. The officials would have to waste time exploring the place on their own. Shall we wait? Song Jing said. Old Song, what do you want to eat for lunch? Li Yi turned around. If it's not for eating, do you have more of that book? Song Jing asked. Old Song, you don't need it. Li Yi waved his hand. Take a look. Can the feud in the village be resolved? Song Jing wanted to take a look. When he was the governor of the Guangzhou commander-in-chief manor, the problem he was most afraid of encountering was feuds. This included fighting for water, marriage, ownership of prey, entering other people's territory to cut down trees, and so on. Conflicts could lead to death. When encountering such a situation, it was no longer a matter of who was right or wrong. Both sides didn't need to be reasonable. Whenever he saw such a situation, he would feel vexed. If he could not solve the problem, would he have to use his authority to suppress it? The more he suppressed it, the more serious it became. Today, he found out that it could actually be written in the book to teach officials. What was written? I'll give you one. Li Yi saw that Song Jing insisted, so he agreed. Aha! Bai Gu coughed. One for each of you. Li Yi was straightforward. He didn't wait for everyone to cough. After saying that, he left and asked people to copy it. They had also copied it previously. Printing used paper, and printing paper required a lifespan. Not long after, the copied books were sent to Li Longji and the others who were preparing for the tea party. None of them were not curious. What kind of methods were used? Li Lang, is what is recorded in the book useful? Princess Yongmu didn't want the book, so she asked. In the entire world, there is only one group that can come into contact with this matter, the party. The party is a group of gentlemen, and not a party. The party is a group of villains and not a party. Li Yi raised a finger and said proudly that he was a party member. The party is a group of gentlemen and not a party? Princess Yongmu nodded. Yes, there is only one party in the world that can solve the problems of various ethnic groups and classes. The name is not important. The most important thing is to serve the people. The party of villains, the party fights first, not asking right or wrong. The party of gentlemen, the people first, curing diseases and saving people. If you join this party, you must be prepared to sacrifice for the people. At the critical moment, even if it's a mountain of knives and a sea of fire, you must rush to the front without hesitation. Li praised, but there were actually some bad things in it. However, it was promoting positive energy, right? What party? Xiaolong was curious. A magnificent Tang party. Li Yi took a while to come up with the magnificent Tang party. Ba Shui Li family Zhuangzi party sounds good. Princess Yongmu said and nodded. The magnificent Tang party is also good. Yes. The only way to solve the problem is the party constitution. Li Yi was helpless. The party constitution can't be drunk. Princess Yongmu laughed. That was Du Kong. Then she reacted. Li Lang, go and sleep for a while. No, I've been sleeping on and off for 2 hours. I miss it. Li Yi shook his head and refused. He would sleep after dinner, and had not eaten lunch yet. Xiaolan and I made steamed buns for lunch. We made fried buns. We drank wild vegetable egg soup. The wild vegetables were picked by Ma Dan Go Dan and Donkey Dan Donkey Dan looks strong now, not like when he was sick. He smiled at everyone he saw. Most of the wild vegetables can't be eaten. So Xiaolan and I picked the tender ones to make soup. Princess Yongmu talked about the craftsman's child. At that time, the baby had a fever. Now that he was in good health, his 2 brothers helped him while digging the wild vegetables. But they were more of a hindrance. There were not many wild vegetables in Luoyang. Most of them were old, and a small number of them were old in the summer. However, after the seeds were planted, they sprouted. Either they could not survive the winter and freeze to death, or they could survive and bloom first in spring. That's great. I've long wanted to eat fried buns. There are also wild vegetables. The ones in the greenhouse can't compare to those that grow in the natural environment. Li chose to say something nice. In fact, he could eat anything. Xiaolan added. Put in some carrots. Leave the leaves on them and slowly raise them. When spring comes, they will be bigger than normal. You can plant them in advance. All right. Li nodded. It's Li Lang's idea that is good. Cabbage, radish and carrots can be planted in cold places in winter. Princess Yongmu had a proud look on her face as she spoke. There were seeds. In the past, they had to be placed in the south before the seeds were transported over. Otherwise, the vegetables could not survive the winter. In winter, the cabbage, radish and carrots could not be planted. They had to wait until next year. If they could not survive winter, how could they wait until next year? Now there was a solution. The cabbage and radish were placed in the cellar. When spring came, they would sprout just like green onions. They could dig out the top part of the cabbage and plant it in the ground. There were also radish and carrots. When it was time to plant them, they could collect seeds in the autumn. In the north, cellars and houses could be used to help the root crops survive the winter. This would save a lot of transportation costs. Together with the greenhouse, they could grow things at any time. It's mainly for the sake of the sun and germination of potatoes in the future. When the time comes, Zhuangzi and the Agriculture Temple will be responsible for removing the poison from the potatoes and sweet potatoes, and changing the seeds. Li Yi, who was a little sleepy a moment ago, was now energized. When it came to the people's livelihood, every step had to be done directly and not take any detours. Chapter 2135. Why are there still fried buns? Baigu finished eating at noon, and suddenly realized that there were fried buns on some people's plates. This someone was Li Yi. Li Yi had to eat it along with the wild vegetable soup. Be careful when you eat. Don't hurt your upper jaw, noble consort Lu said from not far away. She and Li Dan were also eating fried buns. Princess Yongmu and Xiaolan made 150 dumpling-shaped buns. Why weren't they in the shape of buns? Because buns weren't as fast as dumplings, and buns had to be made with many folds. Of course, if the fried buns were wrapped in the shape of wheat ears, they wouldn't be any less than buns. Li Yi wanted to eat 20 of the 150 buns, and the others divided them. The children who could eat by themselves had to eat, and Li Longji had to eat. The other concubines could only eat 1 or 2 each, and it would be gone if they split it. Princess True Jade, Princess Golden Immortal, Princess Jincheng, and Chi-Dai Pearl Dan could only eat 2 or 3 each. Ordinary people couldn't afford to eat this. It had fish paste and shrimp fillings. There were also leeks and frozen crab paste inside. Old Bai, do you want to eat? I'll make it for you tonight. Li Yi didn't want to give up his share. I don't care. Baigu was angry and didn't want to eat. I'll give you 10. Li Yi pulled Baigu's plate and took it. 5 is enough. Try it. There's too much seafood. It won't do. Baigu looked at Li Yi. I'm here. What are you afraid of? I can eat it. Give me some of your rice. Li Yi took some rice from Baigu's plate and put it on his plate. He took a lot, 4/5 of it. Baigu couldn't eat too much of the staple food after eating 10 fried buns. It was different from the ones made by the people after the newspaper's instructions. The people made them faster and bigger. They would be full after eating 4 or 5. People usually made vegetable buns with a bit of meat, lard, or oil mixed in. The 3 delicacies stuffing had to wait for summer. Leeks were cheap, so he added a little egg and shrimp skin. Sometimes there was no shrimp skin, so it was also called 3 delicacies stuffing. If it was next to the river, it would be even better to put fish meat in the river. Baigu waited. He didn't lift Li Yi's chopsticks to pick something for himself. In terms of money, he would be the first to ask Li Yi how much tax he had to pay. In other aspects, when someone tried to impeach Li Yi, he was the first to stand up and ask the people in the group to investigate the other party. After Li Yi had finished digesting, Baigu picked up a fried bun and took a bite. It's delicious. Xiao Yi, how did you come up with the idea of having a competition between 2 feuding strongholds? I didn't say there were only 2. Many strongholds participated. I'll pay for the prizes. Li Yi emphasized the number of participants. Why was there only 2? Large-scale events required many people to participate and act as witnesses. Iquan of Izhou. The contents of the booklet you wrote for 20 people were different from the contents of the booklet for 40 people in Henan province. There were actually racing rafts in it. Then, you sabotaged some of the rafts and caused them to leak. The 2 feuding strongholds competed. What were you trying to do? See if the other party would save them? If the other party didn't save them, what was the point of recruiting soldiers to save them? Baigu talked about another set of booklets. It was prepared for the students of the Li family Zhuangzi. They had a feud and insisted on competing. The problems during the competition were man-made. I gave you the 4th booklet? That. Okay. It's all progressing. Li Yi was stunned for a moment before he reacted. There's more. Baigu understood that he had only taken part of it. They have a feud. Can't you do things systematically? Otherwise, it would be useless even if I flew over personally. If you want the strongholds to reconcile, it's no different from fighting a war. You have to use a strategy. Before the competition, you have to advertise. Because of a misunderstanding, a few brothers became estranged. Later, there was an invasion. The brothers helped each other and defeated the enemy together. Then, they found out that the previous estrangement and misunderstanding were caused by the enemy. The enemy had been waiting for a long time. Li Yi talked about his arrangements step by step, as if he was telling a story. The stronghold first looked at it, and then was unwilling to accept it. Then they admitted that part of it was right. When a problem occurred during the competition, should they save them or not? What was involved was no longer a feud, but the tolerance of their own stronghold. The foreshadowing in the beginning was for this, one set after another. This included inviting the locals to sing and dance, bribing the locals to cheer during the rescue, and so on. Baigu was dumbfounded. Xiao Yi, you schemed. Have you schemed against me before? Yes. Including Her Majesty. I schemed against all of you. Li Yi actually admitted it. What are you scheming for? Baigu felt that the fried buns were not delicious anymore. For the people to have ample food and clothing. For the Tang dynasty to be proud of the world. What do you think? Li Yi told the truth. He was not lying at all. There's fish in this fried bun, right? It's delicious. Baigu smacked his lips. He realized that the fried buns tasted too good. The main thing is that there are no bones. Old Bai, don't worry and eat. At most, you'll get pricked in the esophagus. I'll cut it open and sew it up for you. You won't die. This kind of means Buddha is merciful. There are still 18 arhats. Li Yi interrupted Baigu. Go eat by the side. Don't disturb me. Baigu looked at him with disdain. It's fine if I don't disturb you, but you're here to eat now. You have to go back. Li Yi reminded him. Bring your plate to me. No wonder it's disgusting. Bah. Baigu said, picked up his plate and left. Aya. If I knew this would be the result, I would have drugged it just now. It's too late for regrets. Li Yi looked very depressed. Li Lang, can't you do it now? Princess Yongmu expressed her support and drugged Old Bai. No, everyone knows. Let's eat. Old Bai actually likes rice crust. Rice that's served at the bottom of the pot. Li Yi suddenly realized that Baigu's rice was mostly rice crust. He looked at it with disdain. The surrounding people were all listening and nodded. Yes, don't drug it. Otherwise, we'll all be afraid. Sometimes happiness was contagious. Luoyang's Li family Zhuangzi, and the large group of people who decided the affairs of the Tang dynasty were happy. The people in the areas affected by the snow disaster were also not worried. The telegrams were sent, and the supplies were sent quickly. Persevere, persevere. The frozen livestock were quickly dealt with. This kind of immortal means is too frightening. The telegrams are sent without any gaps. Wang Juankui, who was originally with Guojiyun in the south, ran to the northwest with the main group. He sighed. Tubo was fine. What could he do if he went back? The most important thing was to resist the assault of Qishur and the Abbasid Caliphate. Every place is progressing step by step. This means that there are things to send. The income along the Yellow River has indeed increased after the victory. Zhang Zhongliang looked at things from a different perspective. It was fine if there were things to send, but what if there was nothing? Guojian ate a lamb leg. He chewed a few times before swallowing it down. With Li Yi around, everything is fine. In all the dynasties he's the only one. He's too strong. He admitted that Li Yi was powerful. He was planning and sending supplies at the same time. This was a kind of absolute will. It was aimed at Tubo. You don't need to care about the price I paid. Countless money was poured down. When had Tubo's tribe ever seen such a scene? From weapons to logistics, it was like an avalanche. After beating Tubo to his knees in one breath, he turned to face the Turks and mobilized the power of the four Daos to force Shaohai. Zhang Xiaosong did not consider Li Yi. His worry was written all over his face. After the snow, it won't be easy to fight. We've lost too many soldiers. Chapter 2136. Zhang Xiaosong had always viewed the Abbasid Caliphate and the commandos as thorns in his eyes. Back then he had no choice but to support Su Lu. Su Lu had received benefits from Tubo, the Abbasid Caliphate, and the Tang dynasty. To put it nicely, the Tang dynasty had rewarded Su Lu, but in reality, he had paid protection fees and was beaten up after paying. Su Lu had always wanted to take down Sueya town. After taking down Sueya town, he would be able to contact the later Turks and receive money from all sides. Now that Tubo had submitted, the later Turks were shivering in the cold, and the Abbasid Caliphate had suffered heavy losses. With the Tang dynasty's army here, Su Lu would feel uncomfortable if he did not fight. Zhang Xiaosong really wanted to call Su Lu and say, "Are you going to be so arrogant? Are you going to jump around? Are you going to be so arrogant? It's a pity. If we use some of our logistics, Su Lu will not be stable in the weather. Fight." Zhang Xiaosong looked at the others and asked for their opinion. No, absolutely not. The exchange of captives has not been completed. If we send troops now, the exchange of captives will stop. The commandos will no longer capture the Abbasid Caliphate. Besides, Li Yi cares more about the lives of the local people in winter. The construction of the second railway and the Yellow River Bridge will cost too much money. If we send troops, where will Li Yi get more baggage and supplies? Transportation is difficult in winter, and the people of Shu have to pay a lot. We should take care of them. Guojian firmly rejected. If you go to war, Li Yi will not be able to bear it. Wang Juankui added. The soldiers have to rotate and rest. If they are outside for a long time, the morale of the soldiers will be unstable. Send a report to Li Yi. Zhang Zhongliang was also tired. They had to guard a large area of the Yellow River, and still had to work. Everyone was homesick. It was not easy for them to come back for a change, but they had to go out to fight again. They could not increase the population, so they had to go home to find wives and have children. Those who did not have wives should set up new families, while they were rewarded for their contributions. Fine, let's send the report. Zhang Xiaosong saw that everyone supported him, so he could not go out. Everyone remembered it in their hearts. Send the report in the morning, and in the middle of the night. How many people would it be? Most importantly, he hadn't even fought yet. He was just asking. Luoyang's Li family Zhuangzi received a telegram when he was having breakfast in the morning. It was late, so he held a morning meeting first. At the beginning of the imperial court meeting, Yao Chong was the assistant prime minister, but during the Wu period, There were too many disputes. Currently 2 hours was considered long. Usually, it would end after a little over an hour. If there was nothing important, because the imperial court was rich, many problems that could be solved with money would be debated. Where to pay 2,000 taels was considered a large sum of money, so they had to discuss it properly. By this year 2000, 20,000 taels was not worth the time. Seeing that the situation is about right, I'll give it to you. I'll take responsibility for the audit later. Songda only listened and didn't speak. Learning how to work in the imperial court would make it easier for him to take the imperial examinations next year. 2,000 taels was just a small amount in his eyes, so he didn't care. He would only check if it exceeded 10,000 taels. When the telegram arrived, he was reporting to Li Yi. He wanted to write down his insights, but Li Yi told him not to talk about those useless things. What insights did the imperial court have? Songda sat down and ate with them. He sat with half of his buttocks and his back straight. Relax, it's been so many years. Li Yi told Songda that he didn't need to be like this. He felt that Songda was becoming more and more respectful. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. Small families can do whatever they want. Our family Zhuangzi needs to be respected. Songda replied, respect my ass. The less capable a person is, the more he needs to prove himself. Do I need to pretend? Sit properly. Oh. Songda moved and felt comfortable. Today they were eating rice noodles. In the morning, they made soup noodles and bone soup. There was nothing in it, and a bunch of side dishes were placed on the table. At this time, the villagers who had just finished their work took a bath and looked at the dishes in front of them. Their faces were full of happiness. The rice noodles are more fragrant than steamed rice. It's just that there are too many steps to make it. It's not convenient for ordinary people. Lu Chong looked at the rice noodles and gave his evaluation. He even had thoughts about eating. Li lowered his head and ate the rice noodles. He pretended not to hear and didn't want to waste time. Sui stopped eating and said, the rice noodles are not suitable for families to make by themselves. When it appears in the form of a workshop, the price will be lower and the time will be less. The noodle shops in the Ministry of Revenue can also do it, but there is a shortage of goods in other places. It's better to set up a local workshop. Baigu was familiar with this. There is a shop in a village that specializes in making rice noodles. I think it won't be bad. Song Jing proposed a small-scale workshop. Zhang Jiling followed and said, in my hometown and other places, the annual yield of the indica rice is high. It's better to eat rice noodles than indica rice. Ask Gang Ro to provide more ways to cook rice noodles. The four ministers explained the situation clearly. They understood such a small matter. If they didn't understand it, Tuan Air wouldn't let them in. As for the quality of the products, they didn't need to worry. In the Tang dynasty, if anyone made food and sold it, and made the customers sick, once the government intervened, they would be arrested. They just needed to compensate. If it was verified, the shop would be closed, and the people would spread the word by word. If they sold shoddy goods, they would be sentenced and beaten with a cane. The cost of crime was too high. The people didn't dare to do it. If you deliberately sold inferior things in a village, the village chief would intervene. You should leave the village. The government was good and regulated. The more there was no war, the better. However, it was another case to sell one's body to bury one's parents. You could ask the government for help. The government would help you bury it for free. Selling one's body was for the sake of appearance. Whoever bought it would have to arrange a place for them. It was not enough to just dig a hole and put it in a coffin. At this time, Li said, rice noodles are just soup noodles and fried noodles. The taste depends on what ingredients are added. The canteen has the recipe. You can just upload it in the newspaper. In addition, if you want to change the cooking method, all the current methods can be used. He knew that it was like spaghetti. If he wanted to make it, he could make thousands of different combinations. Rice noodles were better than noodles. If noodles were cooked for a long time or fried, they would break. Fried noodles should be stretched noodles or handmade noodles. Someone came over and handed Gao Lisher a piece of paper. Gao Lisher looked at it and bent down to speak in Li Longji's ear. Zhang Xiaosong asked if he could send troops to attack the cavalry. Li Longji looked at the officials. Everyone stopped. Song Jing looked unhappy. Look, the general had a large number of troops in his hands and always wanted to cause trouble. Bai Gu looked at the little robot next to him. Why didn't you say anything? If I said it, it would be like now. Everyone is not eating. It's not like they have already started fighting. What's the hurry? The little robot was reasonable. Look, all of you stopped. Gao Lishir. He suddenly realized that he should wait for Her Majesty to finish eating. The little robot understood. He actually forgot. When he saw the military report, he became anxious. Li took the opportunity to use his chopsticks to eat the rice noodles. The soup noodles were eaten very quickly. He picked up the bowl and gulped down the soup. It doesn't matter if they fight or not. Bai Gu and the others, you can talk about it later. We haven't finished eating. Xiao Yi, eat some fruit. Bai Gu was helpless. Okay, let's talk while we eat. Li Yi agreed. Dr. Li. Gao Lishir came behind Li Yi. Let's talk after eating. There's no hurry. Li Yi changed his words. The cause of the matter was that Gao Lishir did not handle it well. Everyone quickly ate and did not talk nonsense. Li Yi did not eat the fruit. He drank so much soup and did not want to eat, so he ate the dried fruit. Hazelnuts and pine nuts tasted good. They were this year's new products. Last year's old products looked at the situation and selected the bad ones. The rest were sold at a reduced price. Chapter 2137. It took them half an hour to finish their meal. They didn't care about the intelligence report at all as long as Li Yi didn't say anything. They had the willpower and were used to it. When there was no telegram, the border would send urgent military intelligence. After receiving it, shouldn't they eat, sleep and sleep? The telegram arrived in an instant. How could they be in a hurry? The dried fruits were here. Let's talk while eating. Xiao Yi, aren't you busy? Just in time. Bai Gu picked up a pair of pliers. I'm busy. I need to go to the hospital. Li Yi shook his head. No, there's no emergency treatment. You stay here and talk about whether or not we'll fight. Bai Gu disagreed. Oh, Li Yi agreed. Whether we fight or not, there are pros and cons. If we fight, Zhuangzi will take out the reserves to support us, which will cost us a lot of money. The commandos are capturing the Abbasid Caliphate to exchange for prisoners. Our income will decrease. The advantage is that Su Lu is facing the heavy snow, and the internal conflicts among his tribesmen will worsen. Once the Tang dynasty wins, Su Lu might be killed by his own people. For example, I can add a bounty. From next year onwards, the trade routes will be open. The Abbasid Caliphate can't withstand the military forces of the Tang dynasty and can only give up. Do you want to fight? Song Jing hated war, but he could see Li Yi's thoughts. I don't want to fight. The soldiers should rest. It's best to send out troops in spring next year, Li Yi replied. The commandos will have green grass in spring. It's not good for the Tang dynasty to fight, right? Sui thought of lush vegetation when he thought of spring. The wild vegetables in Luoyang are delicious at the beginning of spring, but it's still covered in snow. After a whole winter, Sulu's men and horses don't have enough food. Our men have recovered and the horses have fattened. The Li family Zhuangzi has enough provisions. Before spring, we'll slowly send them there with the help of firearms. We can cripple Su Lu in one go. As long as we don't surround him, he won't be able to form a formation of mourning soldiers. Li Yi emphasized the difference between regions. Do you think there's grass everywhere in spring? The local climate is unpredictable. Have you ever seen snow seal the roads in July and August? Places without reserves were the most difficult to endure in the spring. When the sun rose, they would feel the piercing cold. It was glaring. The snow reflected the light, piercing to the bone, and not piercing to the bone. One could see through many clothes. The group of people understood. That was no matter when the war started, the imperial court did not need to take responsibility. With the strength of one manor, they could single-handedly support the logistics of the war against Su Lu. It wasn't just buying things. It was just Zhuangzi's stock. During the spring and autumn period and the warring states period, some large families could provide baggage for one battle, but the scale was not large. Li Riji thought of history. In the past, there were many small countries that fought against each other. The local big clans could provide provisions for thousands of people to go to war. Once they won the war, the benefits they would receive would multiply by several times, or even dozens of times. The prerequisite was that they didn't get annihilated by the people who funded them. However, attacking Sulu was definitely not a baggage army consisting of several thousand people, and it was even more unlikely that they would attack from the vicinity of the Li family Zhuangzi. At the very least, they would need to send out 200,000 troops to defeat Sulu in one go. How many warehouses have you built in Zhuangzi? You usually spend a lot of money. How come you still have more? When Lu Youqiu heard this, he smiled and said to Li Yi, "When the 5 hegemons and 7 heroes come, you will be the first to be destroyed. Right now it's the Tang dynasty. Can't His Majesty tolerate me? However, if someone really wants to rob the Li family Zhuangzi, I can only fly away with my families when Tian and Xiaolan." Li Yi nodded, as if he agreed with what he said. "Lu Youqiu, you're flying away? Sorry, I forgot about your military strength in Zhuangzi. You have so many heavy machine guns. You can use them to form a gun formation. Actually, you don't need to, right? You can fly and kill the generals with the heavy machine guns. The generals can't hide." Li Longji waved his hand and asked Li Yi to sit down and talk. Li Yi had to give this face. It was not good to let Li Longji come to his side. Li Longji gave a handful of hazelnuts to Li Yi. "Brother Yi, what about next spring? His Majesty is in charge of this matter. Third brother, you can tell His Majesty which one you think is good." Li Yi let him have the right to decide. "You mention it, and I will tell His Majesty." Li Longji was not sure. "Spring, we have enough supplies now. We can rest and recuperate, but they can't. For example, the Turks, they will be satisfied to live. Okay, next spring, how about March? Looking at the weather, it's best to have heavy snow in March. If it doesn't, we will attack when the grass is green." Li Yi gave the answer. "If it snows, they will wait. The other party will use up their supplies. If there is no snow, they will not give the other party's horses a chance to eat grass." Sui picked the pine nuts with his fingernails. "It should be before the grass is green. When the grass is green, the horses will have grass to eat." Maybe Ting Shua doesn't know. Li Longji pulled a pile of hazelnut shells into the bamboo bin. He continued, "There is ice and snow near the grass. The sheep and horses will have a hard time eating it. They will use their hooves to dig and hurt their hooves. The sheep will fall sick easily after their hooves are injured and can't eat grass. How can the horses run quickly on the battlefield with their hooves injured? Even if the winged knights have a cut on their feet, they can continue to fight, but it will affect their tactical movements." Sui cupped his fists. His face was calm, without a trace of shame. He had practiced it. Even if he had a cut on his face, it would not affect his expression. He was speechless. How did the conversation turn into specific tactics when they talked about strategy? Even the horses' hooves were calculated? Li Yi gave more than 20 pine nuts to Li Longji. This year, the greenhouse can be used to grow wild vegetables. The yield is high and the fiber content is high. Next spring, everyone will go and dig up wild vegetables. It is best to make soup. Some people miss the hard times and make rice dumplings. This year, we will dig up some bean worms from the capital office and fry them for the people to eat. Xiaoyi has worked hard and contributed a lot, Bai Gu said with emotion. It's not hard work. I have Wen Tian and Xiaolan to accompany me. My life is sweet. Li Yi shook his head. Why should I work hard? I enjoy the good things. I eat the chaff and eat the vegetables. I don't have that kind of realm. Bai Gu stood up and took the pine nuts that Li Yi had pinched out. He stuffed them into his mouth and chewed hard. He wanted to praise Li Yi, but Li Yi did not cooperate. In the past, he did not understand Li Yi's words. Now he knew. He told the people to eat wild vegetables in the form of soup. Wild vegetables were different from those grown in the greenhouse. They had more minerals. The capital office's bean worms were shipped over for the people to eat. The people felt that the taste was good and would raise them. Overall, the yield reduction rate of beans was not as economic and nutritious as raising bean worms. Moreover, bean worms did not necessarily have to eat the leaves of beans. They could eat the leaves of many plants. Idle chatter was the livelihood of the people, but he was not a gentleman. Dongzhu, the Arabs who have been in the Tang dynasty for nearly 2 months have arrived in Zhuangzi. Li Guiheng hurried over. He was in charge of some specific matters here. Li Yi stopped pinching the pine nuts. After a few breaths he said, 22 people in 2 boats? Li Guiheng nodded. Yes, they're here. How long has it been? Why are they only here now? I almost forgot about them. Li Yi patted his head. Yes, there were people. Before they came from Chang'an, those people had already arrived in Haizhou. They were too busy, and did not have a sense of existence. Honglu Temple should contact them first, Yao Chong reminded. He was afraid that Li Yi was in a hurry to meet them. Where was the dignity of the Tang dynasty? Okay, I'll prepare something. It's not easy for them to come. We have to ask them to help us advertise. Li Yi agreed with Yao Chong's suggestion, but they had different ideas. Chapter 2138. Dongzhu. They've always lived in Haizhou. Seeing the situation in Haizhou, they took the train to Luoyang once. They stayed for less than a day before returning to Haizhou. Li Guiheng continued to report to Li Yi. He was in charge of Luoyang's affairs, including intelligence. Zhang Shua said to Li Longji, Hunan's Honglu Temple is in contact with the officials. They pay more attention to the living conditions of the people of the Tang dynasty, especially the fishing and railway transportation. When he finished, Gao Lishir said, they're working hard to learn the local language of the Tang dynasty. The language of Guangzhou in the Tang dynasty is different from that of Haizhou, Luoyang and Chang'an. The official language is similar, but it also includes the accent. They pay attention to fishing nets, poultry, livestock, and prices. Yao Chong stood up. Your Majesty, they've exchanged some small items, such as buttons, leather shoes, and leather shoe buckles. They seem to be more interested in auxiliary items. The 4 intelligence departments of the Tang dynasty gathered information from all sides. This was true for foreign merchants, and even more so for the Tang dynasty. The suffering of the officials of the Tang dynasty. In the past, only one department investigated. Now, the 4 departments were not subordinate to each other, and acted independently. There was also a 5th department's inspector. If you want to do something bad, you can't find a way to bribe someone when you know someone is investigating. There were too many ways. Even if there were still people who took risks, most of them were reduced. None of the officials in the main traffic areas were not afraid, because they didn't know who was investigating. The local officials who printed the newspapers knew that these people would snitch on them. Sometimes, the relay stations might send information to the higher-ups through official channels. The officials communicated with each other. There was no need to consider the officials. Send a message to the lower level to entertain such a group. Also, do you know where the other groups are? Gao Lishir's group had physiological characteristics that needed to be identified carefully. Perhaps someone in the group knew them and could provide information. It was impossible to find the Li family Zhuangzi's men. Even if they could find them, it was impossible to bribe them. Kill them? Try killing one? For a time, the local law and order became better. No one dared to touch strangers. You didn't know if they were the Li family Zhuangzi's men. If you think it's true, maybe it's true. You're afraid. Find a hoodlum to kill the Li family Zhuangzi's men. Then kill the hoodlum and bury him. No, Li Dongzhu has a good relationship with King Yanluo, and he always fights King Yanluo and judges. Zhuangzi had promised to ask the dead, and once he did, wouldn't he be able to find out everything? It didn't matter how many middlemen he killed. It all depended on whether Li Dongzhu would investigate or not. As soon as the 22 barbarian merchants arrived, all parties immediately reported the arrival of the barbarian merchants. When foreign officials came to court, they had to go through the Honglu Temple. When doing business, they had to go through the merchant department. The former belonged to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, while the latter belonged to the customs. Xiao Yi, do you want to sell the seeds to them? Bai Gu didn't forget that Li Yi wanted to trick them into selling the seeds. Li Yi thought about it and shook his head. That's not interesting. What's truly powerful is martial strength. Normal trade is enough. Li Yi cancelled his previous plan. It was meaningless, and he needed manpower to arrange it. By the time the Tang dynasty planted all the seeds, would they still care about others stealing them? When the time comes, the inspection will be stricter. The coastline is long, and it won't be easy to guard against them. Ships have to be inspected at sea. Li changed his method. The Tang dynasty had many ships. When he went to inspect them, the other party would have to take them out for inspection, and then allow them to board the ships for inspection. He had other ways to limit the inspection, and the cost wasn't too high. The barbarian merchant ships secretly took the seeds out. In order to avoid the inspection of the Tang dynasty, they would have to take unfamiliar routes. The unfamiliar sea route was not close to the shore, and their ships would capsize. Then, when the great Tang army escorting the merchant caravans discovered crops that shouldn't have appeared in some place, the great Tang army would go and eradicate them. They didn't have to delay it for too long. 10 years later, it wasn't certain who would own the land where the new crops were planted. Let's go take a look. Lu Huaishan was curious. No, it's too far. Luoyang Palace is 25 miles from here. I'll go to the hospital. Li didn't want to waste time. Do I have to take action just because 22 barbarian merchants came? It wasn't like the Tang dynasty didn't have foreigners. It was just these 22 people who came to Haizhou Harbor. The 22 people who came from somewhere were rejected. No one met them. No, there were officials from Honglu Temple who took care of them. One of them was holding a tablet and was responsible for recording. There were people from Honglu Temple who understood the language of the other party. But there were some problems with the dialect. They could communicate. For example, the foreigners in Li Yi's time would say one word when they went to a restaurant: noodles. Normal people wouldn't think that the other party wanted to eat bread, but noodles. When Chinese people went out, needless to say, they would just use their hands to gesture and eat with chopsticks. The kind foreigners would take them, or them to a Chinese restaurant. It was easier in a Chinese restaurant. No matter where the restaurant was opened, at least the other party could understand Mandarin. In fact, those who didn't know foreign languages had to find a tour guide who knew foreign languages. It was easier with a mobile phone. Regardless of whether the translation was normal or not, everyone could understand the general meaning. For example, if you wanted to eat breakfast, you would give 2 words, morning and eat. This was definitely wrong, but when the other party saw it, oh, understood. Breakfast, right? You could even point to the rising sun and shout eat. The other party would definitely not think that you wanted to eat the sun. That thing was not easy to pick. The key was that if you ate it, what would happen to everyone else? International communication turned out to be so simple. Nothing else was an obstacle. When Li Yi's yacht set out and arrived at the island, there was even no such communication. Human communication was intellectual. It could be completed through facial expressions and body language. There were powerful people in Honglu Temple who could understand. They could even understand Sanskrit Buddhist scriptures. What was the difference in other languages? The 22 people had just arrived and were taken to eat breakfast by the tour guide. Anyway, there was always food to eat. They didn't need to spend money. The Tang dynasty was in charge. The Tang dynasty could still afford it. It was within the budget. There was a lot of seafood in Haizhou, and there was no shortage of rice, steamed buns, and wontons. The officials of Honglu Temple didn't take the foreign guests to eat beef and mutton. They knew that there were places where people always ate. They took them to the hot pot place. There was chili oil and a wide variety of dishes. The key was that they plagiarized the Heavenly World's running water transportation hot pot. It couldn't be called plagiarism. This was another Heavenly World. It was a chain. Next, what's wrong recently? The number of patients with appendicitis has increased. The foreigners' eating habits and suddenly overeating after eating good food? Li Yi was dealing with a patient with appendicitis in the hospital. It was the 3rd case. He did it himself in an hour. There were too many cases. It seemed to be concentrated. The nurses in the laboratory department were working hard. They had to know the situation of every case. There were 3 other similar surgeries in progress. They were completed by the nurses, but the speed was slow. Li Yi was thinking about the root cause, not the surgical technique. He didn't want to cut the appendix if he could, because he needed to pay attention to the increase in the number of appendicitis. He was not other doctors who could cut the appendix, just because he said it was useless. Use lactic acid bacteria to control the foreigner's meat intake, Li ordered. Chapter 2139. In the afternoon, the sun was in the west. A large group of people were being examined in the hospital. Those with stomachs were asked to come over and take the small train. The cause of the disease was found. The people who came later had a habit of eating 2 meals a day. After giving them 3 meals, they still ate the same way as they ate 2 meals. Local eggs were cheap, so they bought eggs and boiled them to eat. In addition, the temperature was getting lower and lower day by day, and the gastrointestinal tract was in disorder. Many people already had stomachaches, but they insisted. They couldn't stand it anymore and wanted to see a doctor. As a result, the propaganda was started, telling the people who came later not to eat too much. Surgery was a waste of time and was not good for their health. Those who were slightly uncomfortable hurriedly went to the imperial physicians, doctors everywhere. Those who could be diagnosed were diagnosed. Those who couldn't were sent to the Li family Zhuangzi. At the same time, thick bedding was made so that they wouldn't catch a cold. Li continued to be busy. When the nurses finished other work, he went over and performed the surgery skillfully. The little girl and Li Guizong were assistants. The patients were not on death row, so they were not allowed to be the chief surgeon. The patients who didn't need surgery were given medicine and cheese by others. So many people have intestinal abscesses. It's not good to eat too much. Empress Wang was looking after the child in her courtyard. Doo-doo, the little girl was not here. She was in school. Hearing the news, she sighed. The palace maid next to her, Xi'er, unconsciously put her hand on the position of the appendix incision. She was the first person in the Tang dynasty to have her appendix removed. At that time, she thought she was going to die. Only now did she know that intestine removal was a small surgery for Li Dongzhu. Major surgery was the kind of surgery where a rope was threaded from the thigh all the way to the heart. Yes, that was how Qing Dai lived. Empress, is it possible that someone poisoned Li Dongzhu to make him tired? Xi'er suddenly had an idea and told Empress Wang. Send someone to tell uncle. Empress Wang was serious. When Li Yi finished the last surgery he needed to do, he took a shower and changed his clothes. Empress Wang's people were waiting outside. Li Dongzhu, did someone poison and cause intestinal abscesses? The person asked. Poison? Is there such a powerful poison? Go back and tell sister-in-law that I don't have it. Even for someone like me, it's impossible for many people to get appendicitis at the same time. However, I can choose from other diseases. Li Yi shook his head. What kind of joke was this? How could there be such a useful virus? Large-scale spread, causing people to get appendicitis. Wouldn't it be better to change to another type of virus to be able to achieve this level of technology? He already had one, but he didn't have one for appendicitis. The servant ran back to report. Empress Wang didn't know if she should be relieved or worried. According to what uncle said, he had a poison that could make many people sick. Don't let it out by accident, please don't. During dinner, Li did not seem to be in a good mood. It was not because he was tired, but because the volume of surgeries he had to perform was nothing. He was worried that some of the citizens were afraid of disturbing him. They were clearly uncomfortable, but they endured it, just like Xi'er in the past. Xi'er's family had been brought over. They lived in a building by the Ba River. Presently they had arrived in Luoyang. The officials were also in a bad mood. With so many people sick who could still laugh, they were probably done for. After dinner, Li Yi went to do his ward rounds. Dongzhu, the little robot, followed him. Songda said that the barbarians asked what chili was. What else could it be? It's an edible treasure. We don't sell seeds. Li Yi smiled and arranged for people to bring them to eat hot pot. As expected, they liked spicy food. The situation of the curry sold through Tubo was still unknown. Chili noodles were always available. If there was not enough, they could find a place to plant them. The Tang dynasty didn't sell seeds, let alone other places. The Tang dynasty could sell seeds to Shu, the north, the northeast, Hunan, Hubei, and other places. At the same time, they could also be rewarded. This thing wouldn't die if they didn't eat it. If the barbarians wanted it, they could exchange it with good things. Food. The Tang dynasty would never complain about having too much food. They couldn't do without it even if they were placed in long hair. At worst, they could just age the food and make it into feed. Currently, there was food in the granary, but it was far from enough for 9 years. Hisha. The 22 barbarians ate. They ate hot pot, spicy hot pot with chili peppers. They ate it normally, but they drank soup. Tian Qingyuan, the young minister of Honglu Temple, accompanied them. He ate vegetables and meat. It was spicy, but he was not afraid. The hot pot seasoning he got had herbs. After eating spicy food, he wouldn't have diarrhea, and the other side would be spicy. The base of the hot pot with chili oil was fragrant. It was best to add a spoonful of it when eating noodles. Unfortunately, the price was too high. He could only get 2 taels a month. It was enough to serve people, but he couldn't sell it. If he was caught selling it secretly, he would be fired. Someone in Honglu Temple had sold it before. It was lower than the market price. If it was higher than the market price, wouldn't it be better for others to buy it directly? The person who bought it was Yang Si Sun's man. His Majesty personally asked, "Is there any urgent matter at home that requires money? Children married without a house to live in? Sick without medicine? No meat on the table? Lack of food in the rice bowl? Add clothes for the wife." Every time he asked, his colleague would shake his head. He didn't lack anything. If something was lacking, it could be said that the parents were old and their legs were not good. They wanted 2 good wheelchairs with smooth bearings. No problem. Filial piety. Looking at the situation, it was indeed so. 2 good wheelchairs. Since it wasn't lacking, it was a case of receiving the emperor's kindness, but not obeying his orders. Take him down. After being beaten, he would become a commoner. Without an official position, no one would give him any benefits. Tian Qingyuan thought about it, and began to consider whether he should take the leftover soup home. There were a total of 6 hot pots for 40 people. Could they drink all the soup? Tian Shaoqing, is this for sale? The person drinking the soup asked again. Tian Qingyuan glanced at the glass mirror beside him. The room in Heavenly Earth had a one-way mirror. If someone behind could see this side, it would be a mirror. Songda was behind, so he could contact him at any time. He smiled. "Eat first. I'm not in charge of this. Wait for me to go back and ask." Just as he finished speaking, someone knocked on the door and delivered the dishes. One of the dishes was placed in front of his plate very impolitely. He was stunned and then nodded. There was a note on it. He took a look and noted it down. The note said, "Selling chili noodles but not the seeds. Giving some curry, but not the chili oil with herbs." The other party moved the plate again, and took the note away at the same time. He continued, "But I can still make the decision. If the quantity is not large, I'll sell you the chili noodles. In addition, you can meet His Majesty as a subject of another country. His Majesty will reward you with other good things." He dared to speak, sending gifts in the name of His Majesty. The other party insisted that they were here on the orders of their king, and that some of the items on the 2 ships were to be sent as a tribute. According to the rules, the other party's status was low. The Tang dynasty would not reward them with gold or silver. If they felt that the curry was delicious, they could buy more. Is it grown? The other party obviously didn't just want to buy the chili noodles. He wanted to grow it himself. Ordinary people can't grow it. Only those born in the Yang year, Yang month, Yang day, Yang time and Yang moment can do it. But such people usually don't live past 15 years old. They need to stabilize their lives with magic. Tian Qingyuan's lies came out of his mouth without any hesitation. This book urgently needs a subscription. Brothers and sisters who have the ability to do so, please go to Chidian to subscribe. Thank you. The farmer bowed. There will be a lot more tomorrow. Chapter 2140. The people from the Tang dynasty, who accompanied them to eat, didn't show any expression that they shouldn't have. The barbarians were confused. What was yang? They knew at 15 years old that they couldn't live. But there were also people who could live. Then, am I young? Another barbarian asked. You're not. Look, you're already past the 15th. Tian Qingyuan waved his hand. Maybe I'm lucky. The barbarian was unwilling to give up. Tell me which year you were born in. Tian Qingyuan knew that the barbarian didn't know about the year of Yang. The possibility of him being confused was too small. Besides, if he was confused about the year, there was still the month. He couldn't be confused from the beginning to the end, right? Then his luck would be heaven-defying. The barbarian obviously couldn't say it, but he still insisted. Why don't you sell some to us? We'll take them back and try to grow them. When they're grown, we'll bring them back to you. You won't have to go through so much trouble. I can't make the decision on this. I'll ask. Tian Qingyuan beat around the bush again. This went on for several days. Tian Qingyuan brought a group of people to eat, drink, and wander around. But the barbarians wanted to see Li Longji. Li Longji couldn't see them now. He had to investigate thoroughly, and then teach them the relevant etiquette. In a few days, it would be time for the imperial court meeting. At that time, everything would go smoothly, and the Li family Zhuangzi would summon them. The moon became smaller and smaller day by day. When it became a crescent hanging in the sky, and the north wind whistled, Fan Fan's team was still moving forward. Nearly 70,000 people didn't rest, and gave their horses extra food. There's still 10 miles to go. Hold on a little longer. There's a comfortable camp and hot food there. Fan Fan ordered and encouraged everyone. In fact, there were still 20 miles to go. The Tang dynasty's navy had arrived. When the navy came to greet them, they could breathe a sigh of relief. This was the first time the 5,000 southwestern barbarians had experienced such a long journey in cold weather. It was different from the training in winter. No matter how hard the training was, they knew that they could rest well after the training. With more than 60,000 people, they had to protect them along the way. They had become the support of others. Relying on others and being relied on were two different feelings. Some southwestern barbarians even secretly wiped their tears when they were on duty in the snow at night. They finally understood the difference between them and the winged knights. The winged knights didn't give off the feeling that they were made of iron. At the same time, they also understood that it was not easy to be a leader. Take Dongzhu for example. With him alone, countless people felt at ease. If Dongzhu was here, he wouldn't feel too bad, right? The southwestern barbarians were clearly unable to take it, and the commoners who migrated with them were also in a bad mental state. Fan Fan was worried. He wanted to bring everyone back alive. There were stragglers in the large-scale march, but his team was not allowed to appear. It was the strongest army in the Tang dynasty, second to none. When the people in the group heard that it was 5 kilometers away, they gritted their teeth and persevered. They were almost there. The snow squeaked as it was stepped on. The little children sat on the sleigh and were covered with layers and layers of blankets. From time to time, the old man would get off the sleigh, trot along for a while, and then get back on. They weren't willing to give up just like that. They were about to live a good life, so it wasn't worth it to give up now. Li Endong and the other 4 were also exhausted. Their physiques were not as good as the winged knights, but their willpower was just as strong. There are torches in front. The people walking in front had sharp eyes. The torches were still far away, but they could see them. Along with the shouting, the group suddenly sped up. Fan Fan was stunned. It seemed that they hadn't reached 5 kilometers yet. There should be another 5 kilometers. Where did the group come from? He raised his binoculars and looked. Sure enough, there were torches. Stop, wait. He didn't dare to let everyone continue to move forward, so as not to mess up the formation. The people who were already tired stopped moving forward, panting. Some people simply sat on the ground. Not long after, the long line of torches arrived. Not only were there people and torches, but there were also horses and sleighs. Quick, let everyone drink some hot soup. Change horses, change horses. Someone in the group shouted. A large group of people held torches and trotted. The people in front ran back and didn't stop in the middle. Half an hour later, the people in the back gave the people in front a water bag. It was still warm. The Li family Zhuangzi's people will help. Drink the soup last. Li Endong and the others shouted. They were the southwestern barbarians. The order was passed down. The southwestern barbarians wanted to wait for others to take care of them. But now they stood up and took off the reins for the horses. Yes. Understood. Understood, they replied loudly. They could tell that Li Indong and the others were shouting, the Li family Zhuangzi's people. From this moment on, they would no longer enter the village with their original identities. How difficult was it to become a villager of the Li family Zhuangzi? It was even more difficult than taking the imperial exam. One could pass the imperial exam and become an official, but they couldn't become a member of the Li family Zhuangzi. The people of the other tribes drank the hot soup. Seeing that there were more people around, they didn't seem so tired. The horses naturally became more relaxed. Brothers, pull the plow. Brothers, hold on. Actually, you're not tired at all. Really, if you don't believe me, you can pull the plow. Fan Fan, rest for a while. We're here. Someone walked out of the group and handed Fan Fan a flat wine flask. Fan Fan swallowed and shook his head. Is there soup? Drink. The other party continued to hand him the wine flask. Fan Fan gritted his teeth. Don't talk nonsense. You guys actually found so many people. Drink a mouthful. I'll tell you that I'm also surprised. The other party continued to hand him the wine. I made a mistake. Fan Fan took the wine flask. It was warm, so he twisted it open and took a sip. The 70% alcohol head was soaked in deer antler and wolfberry. Now it was 60% alcohol. It was a little sweet because of the wolfberry. The other winged knights were also given wine, including Li Indong and the others. After drinking a mouthful, his blood circulation sped up. It was refreshing to breathe in the cold air. Tell me, old Lu, how did you get here? Fan Fan asked Lu Tingguang, the leader of the Tang dynasty's navy. The winged knights are in Liaodong Protectorate and Xinqing Protectorate. We sent telegrams to each other, and they received them. After receiving the telegrams, they did not reply. The two places tacitly organized their forces at the same time. The local people listened to them and mobilized a large number of horses and provisions to come here. They met on the road and saw us 2 hours ago today. They came together to reinforce us. We set up camp and waited for you. Otherwise, if we continued to move forward and met in the middle of the night, we would have to set up camp. Lu Tingguang gave Fan Fan a thumbs up. He praised the winged knights. A place with the feathered forest flying cavalry was indeed different. The winged knights, who were in charge of the telegrams, even helped the local people to deal with the local affairs. Although the Tang dynasty built the government, there were many local people. You guys are not bad either. Navy, although the speed of moving on land is a little slow, the formation is stable. Fan Fan explained the distance between the two sides and the time of departure. The Navy was slow. We were slow before so that we can be faster in the future. Follow us. The camps along the way have already been set up. You don't need to build them. Lu Tingguang's mouth twitched. Why do you think we are slow? Oh, old Lu, you like to build camps? Fan Fan was surprised. He understood. There would be camps along the way. When the time comes, the camps would be thrown away. Lu Tingguang raised his eyebrows. The scariest thing in the sea is not having a camp. Fortunately, the Dongzhu built them for us. Chapter 2141. Fan Fan took another sip of wine. He felt that he shouldn't drink. The more he drank, the more he wanted to drink. After taking a sip, he exhaled the smell of wine through his nostrils. It was very relaxing. You don't need to get on the sled. We'll take care of it. Why? Don't you trust your brothers? Lu Tingguang patted Fan Fan's shoulder. You should at least give us some soup. Drinking alone won't do. Fan Fan despised him and took another sip of wine. It was very satisfying. The other winged knights were also relaxed. They could not trust the other troops, but the navy was not a problem. It was not that they did not trust the other party's loyalty. Generally, other troops were afraid that they were not capable enough. The navy had experienced many difficulties. On the return journey, they even risked their lives to abandon water and coal. How crazy was that? They were simple-minded. What if something happened? Why didn't they think more? Just like that, the simple-minded team made it back. Not a single person was missing. Dongzhu was distressed and angry. He heard that Dongzhu was roaring in his courtyard. Stupid soldiers, you deserve to die. With new horses and reinforcements, the team suddenly relaxed. After a short rest, they continued forward. There's a slope in front. It's difficult for the horses to pull the sled. Carry the people. Lu Tingguang took over the command. The navy ran over to carry the elderly, children, and pregnant women on stretchers. Some girls were even carried on their shoulders. The leaders of the various tribes watched. They really could not understand. How could the soldiers of the Tang dynasty be so strong? They were also very close to the people. They did not know that they were encountering the strongest soldiers of the Tang dynasty. The best 5,000 Southwest barbarians, winged knights, and the Tang dynasty's ocean navy. Their food, training, and experience were all different from the ordinary soldiers of the Zhichong government. The people who came to help were also selected to be strong and gave a lot of benefits. Therefore, for the next 10 miles or so, they arrived under protection. The camp here was set up, and the stewed meat in the big pot was bubbling. You guys are really generous. Fan Fan saw the big pot and knew that it would be taken back by the other people who helped. Usually, the village mobilized, and each village would be given a few big pots. When the people ate, they would bring the food from each family and put them together in the big pot to stew. When it came to distributing the food, the elders or the village chief would be responsible for it. Someone caught 2 rabbits on the mountain, put the rabbit meat in the bowl, and ate the same as everyone else? That's easy. Just give me extra firewood and other things. Also, when it's time to worship the ancestors, you can move your family's position forward. The others can eat the meat contributed by others without any objections. Of course, 2 rabbits wouldn't do. Other people's positions were exchanged with their lives. Why were your 2 rabbits so valuable? He would jot it down first and compare it with the others before holding a meeting. The cauldron had set up a rule, and those who had the right to control the distribution of food in the village could use this rule. The older people would only be able to eat a few mouthfuls of meat. They would then share it with their grandchildren. If anyone had a pregnant wife, they would give extra. The villagers agreed. Which family didn't get married and give birth to children? Who wouldn't age? Fan Fan understood. In the past, he didn't really understand, but after interacting with the tribe more, he realized that it wasn't easy to obtain a big iron pot. However, the Li family Zhuangzi's big iron pots were stacked one after another. Some of them had even rusted. According to this, Li should have been defeated, and then, why did it suddenly become so cold? Dongzhu, I'm just joking. You haven't slept yet? Fan Fan was scared when he thought about it. He looked around and saw that no one had seen through his thoughts just now. He let out a long sigh. They had also walked a lot, but the people who came to help didn't feel tired. Now everything was theirs. The cauldron, kitchen knife, and whetstone. As promised, other things would be sent over later. A complete set of needles and thread, thimbles, chisels, planes, trowels, awls, sickles, axes, frying pans, steamers, ladles. They were all made of good iron. They wouldn't spoil even after 20 years. The people from the 2 protectorates' mines were full of this. The Tang emperors had agreed. More importantly, Li Dongzhu was also a guarantor, and the winged knights had said so. They felt that they had profited and believed in Li Yi. What they didn't know was that they had to pay a price for the stable place that would have been given to them. At other times, the people here didn't even have a good iron kitchen knife. They still used stone knives to cut vegetables. The imperial court of the Tang dynasty gave them a complete set of iron tools. They didn't lack anything to live with. Naturally, the people's hearts were with the Tang dynasty. They felt that they were people of the Tang dynasty. Therefore, they had to work extra hard to get the things that belonged to them. No one would mention this. Wasn't it normal to work extra hard? Didn't the people in other places of the Tang dynasty also work extra hard? Ask the people in Sichuan, and see how Wang Jiayuan's leg was broken. If you don't work extra hard, it's considered winning you over. If you work extra hard, it's considered recognition. After recognition, there were many follow-up things. It was different from winning people over. Su Lu had been won over before. Look at what he was facing now. Chapter 2142. Lu Tingguang's words sounded very solemn and stirring. Fan Fan laughed. So you didn't memorize all the codes? What he meant was that if he memorized all the codes, he would destroy the book. When you are caught by the enemy, you can use the opportunity to call for help or at least tell Zhuangzi your location. Then you can think of a way to die. For example, there is a grenade in the telegraph. You can hold it and detonate it. Later, Dongzhu will avenge you. The enemy will die more miserably than you. And it will not be a matter of 1 or 2 deaths. We have brought people who represent the receiving and receiving equipment, and are all prepared to die. Memorized, but I am not familiar with it. Don't worry, if we are caught, none of us will say anything. Lu Tingguang was helpless. It was useless to be sad with people of the same status. But what he said was the truth. They had their families behind them, and were living a good life. If they were caught by the enemy, they would find a way to die. If they died, their families would have absolute protection, and they would enter the martyrs' cemetery. If they confessed, they would still die, and their families would be in trouble. It would be better if they could lie. Remember, don't die if you can. Hold on. Once the location of the telegraph sends out a call for help, Dongzhu will fly over to help. It will take at most 2 days. Fan stopped joking. He knew how important Li Yi was to this. He was flying very fast. If they could fool others, they could hold on for 2 or 3 days. When Li Yi arrived, the situation would be reversed. Who could withstand Dongzhu's attack? On the surface, they were displaying heavy machine guns. Who knew what other weapons Dongzhu had? That's right. If I had 100,000 soldiers, I would not dare to capture someone from the Li family Zhuangzi to force Dongzhu to submit. Dongzhu might. Lu Tingguang followed and said what Li Yi could do. He mentioned to Fan that he could kill 10,000 people at once, and then ask him if he would let them go. He could count to 3, and then kill another 10,000 people at the count of 3. He also told him to go back and kill everyone's families. What was the use of a villager's life? It was even possible for the villagers to slit their own throats and commit suicide. If they died, they could bury 100,000 people and their families with them. You and I are both loyal. There's no need to say such things. Fan waved his hand repeatedly. Just hearing it was frightening. Some of the others hurriedly finished their meal and went to sleep in the house. Some of the babies woke up instead. Seeing so many people, they were so excited that they jumped around in their mother's arms. He fed her porridge made from rice and meat. While eating, he rudely took out the food that he had digested earlier. After receiving the order, the southwestern barbarians couldn't care less about anything else. Sleep, have a good sleep. There was no problem that couldn't be solved when they woke up. After eating, the people of the tribe slept soundly. They had someone to rely on. They were ordinary people. They had never thought of shouldering too much responsibility, and relied more on others to command them. Furthermore, the armies they encountered were all power soldiers. Even if the power soldiers were so tired that they were lying on the ground, they were not afraid. They just needed to wait for them to wake up. It was just like how Li Yi's men felt when they saw the rabbit army during the disaster. The rabbit army stood at the front while they helped to cook at the back. It was daybreak. Those who rested for a few hours felt refreshed. Except for the children never got enough sleep. Those who had milk gathered together. The mothers ate while nursing their children. Dongzhu, both sides met. There were actually 2 people from the protectorate. Why didn't they tell you in advance? Should they be beheaded? The little robot reported to Li Yi, who was preparing to eat in the morning. Shouldn't their heads be twisted off for slandering others? Others are working hard in the wind and snow. Everything is for the Tang dynasty. But some things are asking to punish these people in a warm place. What do you think we should do? Li Yi tapped the little robot's head with his finger. I'm advising you not to punish them. Do you want their heads? What's the use of them? You have to fix them for me. I'm the cloud system's reserve. The little robot retreated. The lights flickered. You mean you want to die? There's a wall beside you. Hit it. Li Yi laughed. I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm going to find Princess Yongmu. Humph. The little robot turned around and ran away. It ran 6 meters to the other side of Princess Yongmu. Help me bring the chili oil, Li Yi said with a smile. It's in the drawer. The little robot came back. The drawer automatically popped open. Why does everyone want to eat minced noodles today? It's so early in the morning. Li Yi put the chili oil into the bowl of noodles. Li Lang, eat less. It's too hot. I don't want to eat it. I usually just eat noodles. Princess Yongmu used chopsticks to mix her noodles. More than half of the bowl was made up of minced noodles. This should not be called minced noodles. It was more appropriate to call it big bowl of noodles. Noodles took up 1/3 of the bowl, and the rest were all other dishes. Li Yi felt that it was better to boil a bowl of clear water, and then put it on the chopsticks. Why pour it into the bowl? When Tian, that's mixed noodles. It's so early in the morning. Do you want some soup? Li Yi asked. Lu Xiaolan went to get it. It's for eating tofu pudding. Princess Yongmu nodded. Yes, but it was not soup. I'll have one too. What do you want to eat? Li Yi asked the little robot. I'm eating dog food, okay? What do you want me to eat? I can charge and watch the two of you show off your love. The little robot turned its body, and its head turned back. Lu is here ah. What's the posture of our little robot? Isn't your neck sore? Xiaolong came back with a big bowl of lure. She looked at the little robot and felt awkward. The little robot turned back. It's okay. Good words are warm in winter, and bad words are cold in June. Later, I'll carpet the place where you walk. It's the gentle slope next to the stairs. Is it okay with cashmere? Li Yi coaxed the little robot. Any fur blanket is fine. I don't want a blanket. It's just walking. Why is it so expensive? Dongzhu, you're the kindest. The little robot turned its body and the drawer popped open. There was a fried hairtail inside, and the corners were removed. Li Yi took it out and patted the little robot's big head. Therefore, local politicians do not bully the people with their power, and yamen runners do not oppress people with their duties. He was saying, good words are warm in winter, and bad words are cold in June. Step by step, what should we do? Yi Fashion asked. He came over to eat this morning, and sat next to him. Who would dare to drive away a person who was more than 100 years old? Li Yi replied naturally, step by step. The higher the level, the heavier the punishment. King Wu was a swordsman, and the people were full of scars. King Chu was a slender man, and many people in the palace starved to death. What should we do? Yi Fashion asked again. It's nothing more than profit and profit, money and money, salty brine, blade coin territory, shell glory, painting engraved. One was to eat salt to survive. The other was to fight to occupy land. The other was to use wealth to show off. And the other was how to write history books. The salt, blade coins, shells, and articles that Li Yi mentioned were all money. They were all for profit. The 4 kinds of money he mentioned were money. However, with different dynasties, the style of money was different in the eyes and hearts of some people. Chapter 2143. On the 30th day of the 10th lunar month, there was only 1 day left until the new moon. The people on Zhuangzi were busy setting up sheds. A light rain began to fall. Based on the experience of the older people and the observations of the imperial astronomer, this rain would last for a few days and might even turn into a downpour. Once this rain stopped, Luoyang would truly enter winter. The court assembly could not be missed. If it was the Hanyuan Palace, everyone could only use umbrellas. The low-ranking officials would use their own umbrellas, while the higher-ranking officials would have someone to cover them. The Li family Zhuangzi would naturally make the necessary arrangements. Sheds were set up on the plaza, and the people under the sheds were not afraid of being drenched by the rain. Li Longji and the others were watching the video. There were 22 people on the screen. There are many small countries in the area, but I don't know which one they are. The Romish country they mentioned might exist, but it might not exist. As for their surname, Li Yi held a pointer and explained on the screen. The other party said that they were from the Romish country. There were a total of 3 ships, and one of them capsized, and everything related to the country was thrown into the sea. The leader of the other party was called Hashika Tawadi, and the others had the same surname as him. Everyone was called Tawadi. That's impossible. Look at the color of their skin. It's dark. Any darker, and they would have gone to the south. Tawadi should be fair-skinned, similar to the people of the northwest. Li Yi continued, telling everyone that Tawadi was a local noble who originated from the invaders. Even the Arabs who fought with them did not have such dark skin. Li Yi began to talk about the local wars. including the Aryans, the Zoroastrianism, the destroyed Gupta dynasty, and the disputes between the small countries. In other words, the other party was not an Arab, but a person from one of the many small countries in Bangladesh. At the same time, they had a low social status in their own country. The leader was relatively fair-skinned, and it was very likely that he was a rich person with the surname Wuxia. The people who followed him were of an even lower status, his slaves. It was like the status of the merchants of the Tang dynasty. They had some money, but it could be taken away at any time. Everyone listened attentively. Some of this information came from merchants or people from other kingdoms, but it was far from Li Yi's. Li Yi started to talk about history, systematizing it, and connecting the local situation. Therefore, it is very likely that these people's connections will be broken after they are connected. In the end, Li Yi concluded that 22 people had a low status in their own country. It would be difficult for them to develop long-term trade. They overcame difficulties from far away. Perhaps the 2 ships, and the things on the ships are all they have. Li Yi considered others. It was easy to use them. They only needed to tell a lie. Why should he watch them suffer? Their families are on the other side. They won't abandon their families, right? They will go back. Zhang Jueling took care of his hometown. For the convenience of communication, he raised pigeons to send messages. He resigned and went home, but he still wanted to help the people in his hometown build roads. If he could easily abandon his family, would he still be worthy of trust and care? Don't look for them in the imperial court. Do a lie detector test on them. Otherwise, if a low-caste person deceived the Tang emperors and the ministers, we can't afford to lose face. Li Yi raised his eyebrows and postponed the official meeting. The lie detector test needed to be carried out through other aspects. First, they would ask whether they could lie and confirm their physical data before asking other questions. Okay, Li Longji said again. The order was passed down, and the 22 people were brought to a special courtyard in Zhuangzi. The vice minister of Honglu Temple, Tian Qingyuan, told them that it was raining and that he would not see them for the time being. The imperial court would be better when the moon was full on the 15th. 22 people lived in this house. The glass windows of this house made it obvious that it was no small matter. There was also a beautiful table and exquisite porcelain on the table. Oh, such a big mirror. I can look at myself alone. What is this place? Going to the toilet? This big basin is made of porcelain? What is it used for? The 22 people looked at the facilities in the courtyard. There were several independent toilets and a special bathroom. They bathed by the river and had never soaked in it. After coming to the Tang dynasty, they had soaked in wooden buckets. They did not recognize this kind of thing. Fortunately, Lu Tong of Honglu Temple was here. He explained to them one by one and told them how to use it. Chapter 2145. Dobgon Modi didn't know that there were many surveillance cameras in the house. He continued to talk and asked someone to scrub his back. Those people were fascinated by the picture he painted. They were waiting to trade for things to earn big money and go back to live in another place. Then, they would buy their own slaves and not work all day long to enjoy themselves. Li Longji looked a few more times and saw that someone was scrubbing his back. He stopped looking and turned to go to another room. The people from Honglu Temple stayed behind to listen and remember the key points. Drink some tea. Bai Gu looked at Li Yi. Okay. Li Yi agreed. He set up the kung fu tea and gave everyone a cup. Everyone looked for old Bai when they couldn't sleep at night. It had nothing to do with him. The local people don't even know how to resist. Pitiful and sad. Bai Gu took a sip of tea and sighed. Those who are beaten are conquered by people from other places. For example, Xiongnu, Xianbei Jiachangdi. Li gave an example. In the past, they were also in some places with low status and couldn't defeat others. It's not the same. At least there were people who resisted and eventually defeated other places. It was Nanbei Chao. Song Jing disagreed. How can we be the same as them? They didn't know how to resist. Li Yi distributed the tea. It's true. The local small countries are worse than before Nanbei Chao. So many that we don't know the name of their country. Maybe when we just know it, it changed in the blink of an eye. Sui had never heard of Sherbo. He looked at Li Yi and knew that he didn't know either. There were so many that even Li Yi didn't know. He could guess how many there were and how chaotic it was. Li Yi didn't add water for the time being. He picked up the almonds and ate them. The more you fight, the poorer you get. The poorer you are, the more you fight. A strong and unified country is a blessing for the people. Just like the Tang dynasty, when the military strength is stable, economic construction is an important strategy to stabilize the country. Especially internal corruption, it must be eliminated. Strong cities have always been breached from the inside. He taught everyone a lesson and kept emphasizing the problem of corruption. Therefore, those who like to fight will die. Song Jing found a topic to talk about. He wanted to weaken the power of the generals. Some wars can make money, such as the oil we need. Our Tang dynasty's taste is not good enough. There are good ones outside, and at the same time, they are easy to dig out. We can bring them back to process them into products and sell them back. If 100 ships of oil were shipped over, they wouldn't even need to use one ship's worth of oil products. Compared to selling glass and mirrors, the things made from oil can be used by the people of the Tang dynasty. Li Yi retorted to Song Jing, who said that it was expensive for him to fight. In terms of appearance, the officials were passable, but in terms of wealth, no matter how poor they were still better off than farmers and laborers. Needless to say, if you don't have the ability, why would you be an official like this? He had the looks, wealth, and talent. If he couldn't find a wife, there would be problems. After thinking about it, Li Yi smiled. There's still a month before the new year. If you can't go back to your parents' home with your wife, you can at least ask the relay station to send you there. He was an official in Chang'an, his home was somewhere else. He had elders in his family, so he ought to show his sincerity. It's not appropriate for His Majesty to be involved in this matter. Reward those who deserve it. Li Yi gave a reason. He believed that he could seize the opportunity to find the person behind this. Perhaps he was in the same group as the one who instigated Buddhism to stir up trouble. How much? Li Longji was indifferent. After all, he didn't need to spend money. The officials were grateful to him for the things he gave. Who would object to Li Yi calling them brothers? It's enough silk to make 8 to 10 sets of clothes. It's enough for 8 to 10 people to use soap for a year. It's enough for them to eat chili oil once every 8 to 10 days. It's enough for them to apply mosquito-repellent toilet water 8 to 10 times a day in hot areas even in winter. Li Yi gave a number. That was all. It was not easy to give other things. Giving kerosene lamps was easy to be stolen. Li Longji was speechless. You'll give 18 to 88? Can't you give 3 to 5? Brother Yi, please spend more. Li Longji agreed. There were many officials in the imperial court. It's okay. It saves money if there's no war. Li Yi shook his head. He wanted to keep all the officials, especially those in Hunan. If they really found the person, how many families would the other party be? Their influence would be huge. It was impossible for the officials to not have any contact with them. Even some of their family members were officials in the imperial court. If it was another emperor, would they give you these things? What? If it was another emperor who came to rob the Li family Zhuangzi, they would have as many as they wanted. That's right, they would have as many mats as they wanted. They would wrap all of you up and bury you. They wouldn't even give you coffins. Li Yi could not help but laugh when he thought of burying people. Li Longji looked at Li Yi and laughed. Song Jing and the others, who were not far away, saw Li Longji's state. They looked at each other, shook their heads and continued to eat meat. After the banquet ended, Princess True Jade brought her people back to the courtyard. Her people carried food boxes one after another for them to eat when they returned. They were not like Xiaolan, who could attend the banquet. He needed to go back and supervise the construction of the road. When the road was completed, he would be an official. He carried a basket and hummed a tune along the way. He seemed to be in a good mood. Guazi's group of 10 left the village through another road. Some were pushing carts. Some were driving carts. Some were carrying poles. And some were carrying choppers and ropes as if they were going into the mountains to gather firewood. Ron went out on the road, found the donkey cart, negotiated the price, and the donkey cart pulled him north. He needed to walk a long distance. The road was not straight, and it had to be 35 miles. He was overseeing the work at that place. The donkey cart moved at a moderate speed, and the bell on the donkey's neck jingled nonstop. After the donkey cart had walked 3 miles, the 2-horse cart loaded the cart, other things and people before starting to move. Guazi drove the cart. Someone got a basket on the cart and covered himself in it. The rest of the place was covered with a sack, leaving a gap. He looked at Ron through the gap with his binoculars and didn't look at the cart. What if he jumped off halfway and went somewhere else? After walking for about 20 miles, it was 10 o'clock in a while. The person observing in the cart shouted, "Stop, the donkey cart isn't going. The donkey is throwing a tantrum." Shoo! Guazi stopped the horse and pulled the brake. He jumped down and took an oil can. He squatted beside the wheel, looking like he was going to oil the axle. A few other people also got off the cart and pointed at the side. There were quite a few people here. They were repairing the road, widening and strengthening the original path. Some of the paths were not in good condition, so they were opened up from other places. Fill in the soil where it should be filled, and put explosives where it should be blasted open. A kind person came over to help and told Guazi that he should lift the wheel, or set it up, so that he could turn it when oiling it. So a few other people lifted the wheel, and Guazi turned it to drip oil. Lee always felt that this was how everyone cheered, to cheer the axle. "It's done," the person in the basket whispered. Guazi got on the cart and continued on his way. After noon, the donkey cart arrived at the place. Ron seemed to be very used to it along the way. Guazi drove the cart to a fork in the road and drove the cart over. The construction workers behind him were still shouting, "You can't pass there. You have to come back when the time comes. There's a pit." Guazi didn't listen and continued to drive. A few hundred meters ahead, it was indeed not easy. The cart couldn't pass. The horses were unloaded. One person led the 2 horses, and the others directly lifted the cart. After a few more miles, there was no one around. The 4 winged knights stayed behind to guard. Immeasurable celestial venerable for blessings, Sima Qingjin began to mutter and chant scriptures. There was nothing else to say. The people outside were stunned after reading the newspaper. Did the temple have so much money? When we went in that day, we didn't see anything. It was just some tables, incense and oil. Yes, there was a little money. The merit box and other things were all given to the Grief Tian Square. It's too little. Compared to this 9 bulls and 1. What? Yes, what? They hid it. Did you see? They have money. Li Dongzhu can get half of it. No matter how much Li Dongzhu takes, he will eventually give it to us. What about the remaining half? Let's rob again. We can't rob anymore. When I came over, the 16 guards were protecting a temple. The rest is guaranteed. Li Dongzhu actually gave them things. What is Li Dongzhu thinking? Praying for the soldiers. Praying for them. I want to take a look at the cemetery of martyrs. Let's go tomorrow. I haven't finished my work today. I'll go with you tomorrow. Sure, I have work to do too. If I don't work, I won't have food to eat. The people discussed animatedly. They were angry and puzzled. They continued to work. Regardless of whether it was the monks and Taoists of Hunan or the imperial government, they were all dumbfounded. They were smarter than the people. What did Li Yi want to do? Kill them all? The imperial government felt that they were wronged. It had nothing to do with them. Look, they still had work to do. They all went to find the Almighty to ask for a solution. In the end, the Taoists and eminent monks all went into seclusion. After the scholars finished reading the newspaper, they felt uncomfortable. There was a lot of money. The content of the newspaper had clearly stated that the soldiers were fighting with their lives. But, soon, the scholars began to look forward to it happily. The newspaper clearly stated that they should buy kerosene lamps and thermos bottles. They were very expensive. They wondered if bicycles were suitable for monks and Taoists. With bicycles, it was easy for them to travel. Chapter 2156. After the matter was settled, Li Yi turned to look at the little robot. Why didn't you tell me about the telegram? I don't send and receive telegrams. I provide daily services. Is the matter of the Turks urgent? You are showing kindness. Yes, you are talking about making dumplings. Food is the most important thing for people. Food is safety, and means quiet. I will create a quiet environment for you. The little robot's voice became softer and softer. Okay, I've learned that safety is the most important thing in food. I thought it meant stability and safety. Li Yi admitted it. There was nothing wrong with it. You are welcome. Let's learn from each other. The little robot added. Princess Yongmu and Xiaolon laughed happily. This was too fun. Li Yi raised his hand and touched the little robot's head. He was probably infected. In the past, his head was always touched by others. Xiaohai's matter is indeed not important. They might not want to fight at all, and just want to test us. Li Yi thought of another possibility. If that is the case, is it suitable for us to return? Princess Yongmu blinked her eyes. The strong only need to show their attitude to the weak. The Turks are too weak. Strategically, we look down on them. Tactically, we value them. I can even send troops over. I have money now. The money donated by the temple will be split with me. Sending winged knights and recruiting troops in the snow will be the same. I will give them all duck feathers. Li Yi did not care. If you want to fight, I can really beat you. Don't think I am joking. Can't we fight in winter? He had to ask Germany and Old Mao about this. Also, his country had once ambushed Old Mao. Many ancestors had frozen to death without regrets. The outcome was victory. Those heroic spirits were immortal. If it were the Great Tang, would I need to have the Great Tang soldiers wear white camouflage uniforms and lie in the snow, willing to freeze to death rather than move, waiting for an opportunity to strike? I can use logistics to smash you to death. I can even fly over. Can't we just live a good life? I have already helped you a lot, including how to get through winter, and buying your pine nuts. Time to eat dumplings. Time to eat dumplings. Amidst the cheers of the children, classes were suspended for the day. Everyone could eat dumplings at noon, including the people working at the construction site. A dumpling weighed 3 taels. It was a big dumpling. People who worked hard at the construction site could definitely eat their fill. There were nearly 2 caddies of dumplings. Ordinary people would take it back and eat it at night. They could leave it for the next morning as it was cold. The restaurants, inns and stalls inside and outside Luoyang City would help them cook and pay them a processing fee. If they told them in advance, they wouldn't have to prepare too much food, and the processing fee would compensate for their losses. There were rich people outside who were willing to buy matches and show them off. Li Longji and Li Qingqi looked at each other. Whether it made money or not was divided into inside and outside. Was that how it was calculated? Is the crescent moon dazzling you? The 6 men on the mountain chatted while the 4 men at the foot of the mountain looked after the 2 horses. They had also received the army's rations. Don't worry, I'll bring you some food later. Come, I'll feed you some rice. Let me blow on it first. Don't burn it. One of them blew on the rice and placed it in his palm. He continued to blow on it and passed it over. A horse stuck its head out and licked it with its tongue. After eating, it looked at the others. The steamed rice was sweet and fragrant. Horses like pepper and sugar. Carrots are good, but chili is not. Radishes are acceptable. The 4 of them kept feeding their rice to the 2 horses, which belonged to the military. After a while, the drone came again and landed at the foot of the mountain. It brought pellets, pepper, carrots, eggs, and rice. There was a note in the box of rice. It said, separate from the horses. Don't spread diseases. See, I'm talking to you. There's a stream next to the mountain at dawn. I'll let you 2 bathe. Divide a skewer among a few people. Each person takes a bite and wait for the next skewer. Don't be afraid of getting stuck. Wash it before you sleep. No sandblasting. In the Li family Zhuangzi, Li Yi was talking to the officials. There was beef again. In Henan province, it was impossible for cows to not die. People were dying every day. The cows that could not work would be sent to the Li family Zhuangzi to enjoy their old age. Once there were too many of them, they would die in batches. Some cows were especially uncomfortable. When they fell sick, their overall condition would deteriorate. Just like humans, they had multiple organ failure. At this time, they would be given a quick death. In an instant, the electric current would destroy their nervous system. They would die before they could remember the process. If this method was not used, the cows would die even if they lived for half a month. For humans, euthanasia was heavily influenced by the law and morality. For cows, it did not matter. It was resolved in less than a second. Thus, the Li family Zhuangzi had a lot of beef. The people who sent the cows would receive a sum of money to buy a calf and raise it for a year. At the same time, they would feel better. Eating beef was not worth it. The smaller the skewers, the drier it would be. Li chose a big skewer and shared it with everyone, one for each person. He would rather wash other people's teeth. If he did not scrub the teeth, it would be less harmful to the teeth. Xiao-yi, meat eaters are despicable. Bai Gu stuffed his teeth and took a toothpick to scrub his teeth. Li was eating happily when he heard. Old Bai, you want to discuss the classics with me while I scrub my teeth? Meat eaters are despicable. Those in power do not know the hardships of the people. Those in the palace do not know the situation at the border. It's just a matter of rank. What does meat have to do with it? Chapter 2165. Is this method useful? Li Longji was not happy at all. He thought that the other party would actually throw out a technique to achieve a certain goal. Just this technique alone could make a lot of money. Why would they give it to Ron if they were rewarded? Some people have technical reserves and only release them when the time is right. Li Qingqi said. His workers' alliance did not have such reserves. Once someone brought out a new technique, he would definitely find a way to use it and give the craftsman benefits. The faster the Tang dynasty's people released the technique, the better. What was there to reserve? The Li family Zhuangzi had technical reserves, but it had nothing to do with the people's livelihood. Most of it was for the military, and only a small part was related to the people's livelihood. I didn't think much about it before. I'll sort it out later and bring out this technique. Li said. He had this technique all along, but he never thought about it. He thought that the craftsmen of the Tang dynasty were very skilled. He did not see the situation of the Tang dynasty. Li Longji smiled. Good news. We've confirmed that there's someone behind this. Li Longji felt that this was the most important thing. He knew that someone was behind this. As for technical questions, he believed that he could get better answers from Brother Yi alone. But why ask? Brother Yi was already very busy and did not have much time to accompany Yuan. As long as he promised a lot of money, the craftsman would definitely think of something. If he threw out 1,000 liang, the craftsman would think of a better way. But if he delayed Brother Yi for 2 hours, how could 1,000 liang be exchanged? Couldn't Brother Yi sleep for 2 hours? Li Longji already understood the value of knowledge. 1,000 liang could not compare to Brother Yi's 2 hours of good sleep. When Brother Yi was well rested, how could 1,000 liang compare to making money? Songde did not care if it was 1,000 liang, but he was responsible for more than 10,000 liang. Brother Shunji, this is good. Is there a lot of yellow sand locally? The movie, no. Ron in the video finished watching and asked Ji Yijing. The one with the most is from the Guangzhong area to Luoyang. Ji Yijing said. Bullshit, there's enough yellow sand locally. There are few plains, but there are many mountains around, especially Luoyang. Check, see where there are people digging up large amounts of sand around the capital office. I transport things by train, and it's still a single track. You want me to transport yellow sand? Li Yi reacted quickly. Are you guys joking? The train's daily transport capacity is fixed. Currently, it's transporting rails and seafood. You want me to transport sand? Li Longji and Li Qingqi, on the other hand, didn't think that Brother Yi's swearing was impolite at all. The two people on the screen continued to communicate. Chapter 2166. As they chatted, the soup was ready after eating a small roll. Duck rack cabbage tofu soup. The tofu was frozen tofu with a honeycomb shape inside. Northerners usually ate this in winter, because tofu was not easy to store. It could be stored for a long time after being frozen. One type was made into salted dried tofu, while the other was made into frozen tofu. They could make it at home, but not fermented tofu or stinky tofu. If it was in a place that was not cold or dry, it would be made into stinky tofu. This included stinky tofu from the Tang dynasty. The Japanese Empire had just learned how to make fermented tofu, and it was later called natto. As for the current Silla and later Koreans, the soy sauce soup they drank was military rations from before the Tang dynasty. Baggage used vinegar cloth to boil a bunch of seasonings and fine linen cloth together. Vinegar was mostly used to sterilize. The good ones were fermented tofu, and the dry ones were made by fermentation. Salt was added. Once the weather was hot, some water would be added to make soy sauce, and some would be added during war. It could replenish vitamins, and after protein fermentation, it could also adjust the gastrointestinal bacteria. This was the wisdom of China. Even if they went to sea, they would not get sepsis. There was no night blindness during night battles. Otherwise, how could there be so many night attacks? Li thought. Eating duck rack soup actually gave him a sense of national pride. Brother Yi, do you have a good plan? Li Longji did not know what his brother Yi was thinking. He looked at Li Yi's glowing expression and asked, "There's no need for a good plan. Military power is enough." Li looked down on people who played tricks behind their backs. If you did not have soldiers, you could be dealt with as you wished. Do we still need to expand the army? Li Longji agreed. Ever since the Winged Knights became an army, he realized that the imperial court was especially stable. No matter which family's officials were very cooperative. Train the Winged Knights in echelon. According to what we said before, there will be no more recruits in the future. The House of Subjugation will gradually be abolished, and volunteers will be the main force. Li knew that it was not easy for the soldiers of the House of Subjugation. They had been soldiers for generations, and there was no hope. Now their children were all studying hard and waiting for an opportunity. If there were volunteers now, there would not be people who could not bear the hardships of joining the army and insisted on leaving. How many chances did the first batch of 3,000 Winged Knights have to leave? Why didn't they retreat? With the responsibility of his family on his shoulders, there was no way for him to retreat. His life was worse than death. Pathetic. Li Qingqi looked at Ji Yijing's performance on the screen and shook his head. They actually know that the situation is hopeless, but they are unwilling to accept it. They are familiar with history books and know about the changes of dynasties. Once he had the chance, he wanted to replace him. There's no life in my heart. Li Yi pursed his lips. In any case, he didn't want to be the emperor. If he killed Li Longji and became the great emperor, the place would be in chaos again, and the outsiders would take the opportunity to invade. What he could do as an emperor, he could do as well now. Why did he have to sit in that position? Everyone, let's eat. The duck meat peeled by Li Lang is delicious. Princess Yongmu didn't want them to discuss national affairs while eating. It was too tiring. Fortunately, Li Lang was there. Otherwise, the Tang dynasty would definitely not be as good as it was now. She thought very simply. In fact, she didn't know Li Yi's role at all. It wasn't that the Tang dynasty couldn't compare to the current problem. The Tang dynasty would be finished in a few decades. Let's eat meat. Let's eat at night. Li Longji was in a good mood. He looked at them when they were being schemed against. He felt like a cat catching a mouse. Interesting. You guys can do whatever you want. After they finished eating, the two of them strolled around. Everyone continued to work on the road. Nowadays, the road construction was not outsourced. If the road was not good, it would collapse as soon as the car passed by. A group of people who were working on this section of the road would be punished. To put it lightly, it was going against fate. To put it bluntly, it was delaying military intelligence. If it was minor, they would be exiled. If it was major, they would be hanged or beheaded. So why was the quality of the Meiguan ancient road construction so good? They used their lives as collateral to repair it. There would be no problems for at least a few decades. They would continue to repair it later. There was no situation where it would break right after it was repaired, and there would be no punishment. The railway was very stable now. people patrolling and repairing it every day. If there was a problem, they would lose their lives. Li originally thought of cavalry patrolling. The person in charge had his own wisdom. How much did it cost to patrol? Horses ran here and there. It couldn't be a cavalry patrolling, right? The train passed by many places. Things were thrown down from the train. Water was thrown to wash the coal. All the coal was shiny. It was good coal. Sacks were thrown down. Some of the sacks were broken, but some were still intact. The villagers by the roadside helped to patrol. They brought things to pick up the coal that was thrown down. There was nothing to do. Several old men wandered along the railway with sickles, ropes, and shovels in their hands. They cut the grass and cut the firewood on the trees by the roadside. They helped to patrol, and brought back rabbits and pigs. They also helped to light the fire. The power of the masses was the most powerful. If they gave some benefits, they would treat it as an important matter. Moreover, the newspaper also said that the railway was very important. Li also didn't deliberately put things on the railway track. There were no surveillance cameras there, because the people knew the consequences of letting the train derail. The people helped to guard the road. The train from Haizhou even threw dried fish down. The people of the Tang dynasty are simple and honest. It's worth it to pay more for such people. Li looked at the construction work in the low-lying place on the screen, and sighed with emotion. When the people built the road there, the roadbed below was not good enough. If the roadbed was laid normally and pressed, it wouldn't be visible. As a result, the people carried buckets and stuck iron rods into them. They shook them back and forth, and poured sand to water them. The sand was washed into the mouth of the rods by the water. After that, the people above continued to send in small stones. More stones were placed and the rods pressed down. Li felt that if the road was repaired, even a 100-ton truck could pass through. After sighing with emotion, Li remembered what Li Longji said just now. He replied, "Don't eat duck meat at night. It's too cold. If you still want to eat the same taste, you can eat roast chicken at night." "I'll listen to you, Brother E." Li Longji was in a good mood. Look, next to Brother E, he could ask about politics and give ideas. He was also in charge of the Imperial Physician Department. Suddenly, he wanted to eat food that the canteen didn't prepare. He could even cook for him. He wanted to write poems, sing and dance. Brother E could play with him. He could also draw or write calligraphy. When he encountered danger, he could instantly kill the enemy. Yes, Li Lang is right. Princess Yongmu nodded. Suddenly she didn't know why, but she felt a sense of urgency. It was as if someone was going to steal Li Lang from her. On the screen, Ji Yijing also seemed to have a sixth sense. He kept looking left and right, and even looked at the camera for 2 seconds. The camera gave him a close-up. "Zichong, do you feel that someone is looking at us?" Ji Yijing asked Ron. "There are many people looking at us." Ron didn't have a sixth sense. The people repairing the road would occasionally look at the two of them. Yes. Ji Yijing shook his head. He thought that he was thinking too much. This kind of situation belongs to the sense of danger. Everyone has it. It's just that some people are influenced by empiricism and no longer believe in it. Li Yi saw Ji Yijing's appearance and introduced a theory. Zhuangzi's bodyguards who survived the battlefield were more outstanding in this aspect. Those people didn't get injured after fighting a single battle. They fought again and again. Chapter 2167. When fighting, how many people would think of using their fingers to stab their opponent's eyes, and then continue to stab their opponent's eyes? How many people would use their head to smash their opponent's head when their hands were intertwined with each other? At the same time, they would use their teeth to bite their opponent's nose, tear their opponent's face, bite their throat and suck their blood? The guards in Zhuangzi could do it. As long as there was a need, they could do it. Everything they did was to kill their opponent. When they were being choked, they would never use their hands to pry their opponent's hands away. Instead, they would stab their opponent's eyes or hit their opponent's unprotected internal organs or lower body. If they had a weapon such as a dagger, it would be even more obvious. These people had lived on the battlefield, so their sense of danger was very sensitive. If one had to analyze it from a narrow scientific point of view, They could come up with countless theories. Just like the shooting events in the Olympic Games, the number of points each time, the psychology and actions of the competitors, scientific analysis, the amount of data was endless. For example, muscle memory, including basketball, the moment the shot was made, one would know whether the shot would go in or not. Why? There were theories to support them. But it was useless. It was not that science was wrong, but it had not reached that level. Therefore, Li was very interested in Ji Yizheng. The other party lacked a kind of training. Will it be discovered? Li Longji did not want to alert the enemy. It won't be discovered. I'll send another set of cameras. He moved out of range, so the angle of the fan will be reduced. Li arranged for the drone. With a fixed wing, it could stay in the air for a long time. When the drone took off, it could compensate for the angle problem from the sky. Anyway, the people on the ground could only see a small dot. Li Longji looked at the screen. Brother Yi, can you increase the security of my courtyard? Third brother, don't worry. Absolutely not. The periphery is enough. I don't have that kind of thought. Li Yi guaranteed. I've never monitored you. Why would I monitor you? I'm also a human. I need to interact with other people. I'm always monitoring you. Is it tiring to live? I really don't. I know about the situation in Zhuangzi. Princess Yongmu said. My Li Lang told me that I can see places with surveillance cameras at any time. The perimeter should be strengthened. Li Longji was relieved. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good to be watched by Brother Yi at night. Since his daughter could also participate, there was naturally no problem. Brother Yi, it doesn't matter to me, Li Qingqi said generously. You can watch if you want. I do. Li Yi retorted. Why would I look at you? Do you think I've never seen it before? I've seen more movies than you. Zicheng, what are your plans for the future? An important question finally appeared on the screen. Usually, when you ask someone what they are going to do in the future, it means that you are going to arrange something for them. Otherwise, why would you ask? Of course, there were also those who were just asking and had no intention of helping. For example, some of Li Yi's relatives at that time didn't ask because they wanted to help him, but because they were his elders. What is important to the elders? Show it and ask the juniors what they want. You said that I want to do business, but I don't have money. Can you lend me some? These elders didn't say anything. Li Yi always encountered such situations. Whenever it was New Year, or when his parents were going to attend someone's wedding, he was afraid that there would be problems and would accompany them. When everyone was chatting, he would constantly send messages to his employees. It's money. Someone asked while chatting. What are you doing now? Li Yi replied. I'm doing a small business. It's not easy to make money. When the other party heard this, they continued to ask. What are your plans for the future? Li Yi replied. I'll work hard. The elders immediately told him. Work hard is not enough. You have to see the path of development clearly. You are like my child. They sell medical equipment and make a monthly profit. You are still young. As an uncle, I will say something unpleasant. Look at the clothes my child bought for me. Look at the brand. Look at your parents. There are no brands on their clothes. Did you buy them from a roadside stall? Li Yi looked at his parents' custom-made clothes. Indeed, he couldn't see the brand. He nodded. Yes, I got someone to make it for me. The elders continued. Did you get someone to make it for you to save money? What's the difference? Li Yi replied. No, it has nothing to do with money. It lacks comfort. Elder, it's good that you know you are uncomfortable. You have to work hard in the future. Li Yi replied. Got it. I promise to work hard. Elder, therefore, when he heard this now he had some thoughts. At the same time, he wanted to see what kind of position the other party could provide for Ron to surpass being Princess True Jade's gigolo. As Princess True Jade's gigolo, he could stroll around several places in the Li family Zhuangzi and take things out, including makeup boxes. If you change your position, I'm sorry, but the Li family Zhuangzi doesn't entertain you. Those below rank 5 don't even think about coming. Those above rank 5 have to be open-minded about the imperial court meeting. What rank were you, Ron? Did you rely on your rank to enter the Li family Zhuangzi? As an official, I'll bring blessings to the people. Ron thought about it and gave an answer. One is marked by the company one keeps. No matter how useless he was, he had Li Yi as his role model all day long. He also wanted to be better. He was afraid of Li Yi, afraid that when His Majesty asked, he would use Li Yi as a blueprint. But that didn't mean he didn't envy Li Yi. The Li family Zhuangzi governed well, and it was even better for outsiders. If others were sick and couldn't be treated by the Imperial Medical Department, they would be sent to Li Yi. Li Yi hadn't killed a single person in his current position. Li Yi wasn't an enemy, let alone an opponent. Ron learned and understood like this, thinking that he should be a good official. If you want to bring blessings to the people, you should first take charge of the people. If it's useless, how can you bring blessings? Ji Yijing followed Ron's words. I want him to die. Li Longji couldn't help it. What a good Ron, you want to bring down the path. After saying that, he realized that he had said something wrong and looked at Li Yi. Li Yi nodded. Indeed, I really want him to die. Li Longji breathed a sigh of relief. Look, Brother Yi was so sensible. I was thinking too much. Brother Yi will definitely handle this situation well. Yuan, what are you laughing at? Li Longji found that his eldest daughter was secretly laughing. My name is Wen Tian. Princess Yongmu was unhappy. Hurry up and marry me. Brother Yi, this matter. A grown girl can't be controlled by her mother. Li Yi expressed his agreement. Isn't it that a grown girl can't be controlled by her mother? Li Qingqi asked. Daughter, this son. Li Yi gave the answer without thinking. Yes, go find her mother. Li Longji was depressed. He's leaving again, follow him. Princess Yongmu found that Ji Yijing was about to leave. The little robot came over. Mistress Lu has a stomachache. Qing Dai brought 2 nurses to treat her. I'll go, Li Lang. My mother has a stomachache, I'll go first. Princess Yongmu didn't care about anything else. Go, I'll prepare here. Li Yi stood up. His mother-in-law has a stomachache, how can she handle it? I'll go too. Li Longji was worried. Other men were not suitable to go, but he had no problem. This who? Where's Ji Yijing? Li Qingqi naturally couldn't stay alone. Don't worry, she's watching. The little robot replied. It was just a change in the way of exercise. In this situation, running by oneself or bending over exercise was not as good as auxiliary exercise with help. Auxiliary exercise was more in-depth and appropriate, and the treatment effect was obvious. Brother Yi is right. Li Longji came over. Princess Yongmu's mother was not feeling well, so he had to come. In terms of dignity, Empress Wang was the first. In terms of charm, Wu Jiyu was the most satisfactory. In terms of talent, Lu Jiyu's birth represented an aristocratic family. In the past, when Lu Jiyu gave birth to a daughter, her status dropped slightly. She was the first among the women in the palace who could not give birth to sons, and could only give birth to daughters. Now the situation was different. She gave birth to a daughter, but this daughter was going to marry Li Yi in the future. It was not a problem in the future. Now he was living in Zhuangzi. The key point was that Li Yi did not have any masculinity. When he saw Princess Yongmu, he smiled mischievously. He even made clothes for her and cooked for her. When he met Princess Yongmu during her period, he cooked porridge for her alone. Was such a man still a man? He did not have any backbone. How could a man be like this? Such a person, after seeing him, would be criticized. Why don't you take care of your body? You are the role model of all men in the world. You are working too hard. There was no other way. If not, they would not meet. When they met, there would be a group of Li family Zhuangzi guards or winged knights around them. The key point was that they could not win in a one-on-one fight. A wise man submits to circumstances. Lu Jiyu felt that Li Yi was a wise man. This child was good. Her daughter was with this man. She was relieved. No, she was not relieved. She had to tell her daughter to learn to work more. Diseases were that simple. What's with the lack of yang? Just give yang, and it will be over. Yin and yang could be replenished. Li Yi could not control the sun. When the sun set, Ji Yijing hurried back. Guazi could not watch over her. The drones followed in the sky. They had to catch the other party's nest. Li Yi could not sleep. He was not afraid of anything. He just wanted to be in control. He entered the temple. Sigh. The courtyard of the temple is big. It is not easy to monitor. Unfortunately, he does not know my methods. Li slept for a while and woke up. He felt that he had returned to the state of a resident doctor. He had to take care of things. Otherwise, people would think about it all day, especially the match workshop. Although the match workshop was separated, if one wanted to do something bad, one of the workshops would still explode with a bang. Because of this kind of thing, even if a person died, Li felt sad. Princess Yomu reminded him that there were things like bean sprouts from all kinds of beans, and garlic sprouts from his home. That's right. Next year, we'll build a larger warehouse and equip it for the capital and Hunan prefectures. As for the other places, we'll take our time. More than 2/3 of the people in these two places didn't cook for themselves. It was inconvenient to cook when they went out to eat. The people who sell food have to supply it to the market, and the cost of storing it is high. If they don't store it well, it will spoil easily. Li mentioned that the storage units did not necessarily have to be managed by the government. Merchants would be able to build a warehouse, and then look at the price of the items in the market to make a profit. This year, the Li family Zhuangzi of Hunan province dug a lot of big holes, and built a vegetable cellar on top. When the weather got colder, the vegetables stored in the warehouse would be eaten up, and the vegetables in the greenhouse would be cheaper. Dongzhu, Songda came in. The train from Haizhou to here brought a lot of people from the Bohai region. The winged knights said that they wanted to give us a surprise. You call this a surprise? Okay, a surprise. I'll find them later, and play games with them to thank them. Li stopped scooping the meatballs from the soup bowl. He acknowledged the surprise. I'll go and make the arrangements. Songda reported and ran out to organize the people. The people from the Bohai region couldn't be directly placed outside. They had to be checked for diseases in Zhuangzi first. The train went all the way to the station in front of Zhuangzi. A tribe came over. It wasn't a woman, an old man, or a child. After Li finished his meal, a group of people went to see the people who had just arrived. They didn't want to be separated. They were afraid that their women and children would be sold, so they took the train as a tribe. Half of the goods were placed under the carriage of the truck. People can stay on top and see the scenery outside the carriage. The people in the tribe didn't believe in the strength of the Li family Zhuangzi. They suggested that we don't tell them in advance and come and see for ourselves. Songda was busy for a while and arranged the people in charge. He went to Li and reported. Strength. Strength means that we didn't prepare well in advance. Let's eat wontons. Li thought that the other party had nothing to do, so there was no need to hide such things. The hot water for bathing was not heated, and the clothes to change into had to be found from other warehouses. Songda nodded. It's wontons. The Zhuangzi prepared enough. There's no need to make donut soup. That was in the past. Now the wontons that the villagers wanted to eat were given to them by the canteen. A small tribe of more than 1,000 people came over. If it was too far, they wouldn't do it even if there were relay stations along the way. The profits of the train would slowly recoup. The money earned would be invested into the construction of new locomotives, carriages, and tracks. Li and his group went to the train station to look at the goods. Tussock cocoon, pine nuts, hazelnuts, dried mushrooms, mink skin, bear skin, deer skin, tiger skin, ginseng spurge, radix parvifolia platycodon. When will the tracks be laid? Baigu was interested in this. He couldn't collect taxes on medicinal herbs, but he could collect taxes on other things. Li didn't say anything. If these things were in his place, how many times would he have died? The northeast was a good place. Big tigers looked scary. Very good. There were bones and a whip. The dried gallbladder was placed together with the bear's gallbladder. He knew that with the current Bohai Kingdom's ability, they would not be able to kill all the wild animals. The area where the locals lived was very small. Most of it was still forest. First, build the railway along the canal. Then look at other places. Bohai Kingdom doesn't need it. Li Longji didn't care about the things in front of him. He cared more about the people's livelihood. The people of the Tang dynasty needed the railway. When the weather turned colder, a large number of marine fish would come ashore. After the innards were cleaned and sprinkled with salt, they would be loaded onto the train and transported to the capital office. A few carriages of marine fish would be transported to Luoyang. There was no need to add salt. Fish was meat. When they arrived at Chang'an, the weather would be cold and the fish would be hard. They would be transported to other places. The commoners could buy them with a little money. It was cheaper than grain. Zhang Jieling continued. No matter how much money we have, we can build the railway to other places along the Yangtze River. Dangerous places can be cut off. We can build roads that other carriages and people can use. Plank roads can also be built. It's better to transport short distances than to carry loads all the way. Who knows, we might be able to eat Guangzhou's fruits in winter. Bring back the new pineapple seeds and plant them in Guangzhou and Luzhou, including the local bananas. They can be transported over when the railway is built. Li Yi added. He hadn't eaten any bananas yet. There were dried banana slices, but he didn't want to eat them. The variety of pineapples was not good, and they couldn't be transported over. If they planted pineapples from outside, they would have them in a few years. If they shipped them by sea, the steam engine ship would transport the pineapples and unload them in Haizhou. No, they would unload them in Suzhou and send them over by train. Forget about the mangosteens. Unless they flew there or drove a yacht, no one could eat them. The winged knights of the later Turks have called. The gender characteristics were obvious and reflected in the pulse, but it was difficult to determine. Do you have other methods? Mrs. Guanluo was still curious. After resting, take a look. It's simple, as long as the baby is in the right position. The little lass continued to hold Mrs. Guanluo's hand. Zhener needs to recuperate well. Zhuangzi doesn't lack anything. Empress Wang was still confident. No matter how precious the medicinal herbs were, Zhuangzi had everything. As for whether or not to use medicine, and how to use medicine, she believed that others would know. After a while, everyone temporarily separated, and had lunch together at noon. Guan Jiging's family was arranged to take a bath. The little lass accompanied Mrs. Guanluo, and taught her, and Mrs. Guanteng how to use things. Li Guizong was in charge of the other side, so the family enjoyed special treatment. Li Guizong was depressed. He had brought 4 people with him. He had memorized some medical books, but he couldn't describe the specific application. The time he spent learning was too short, so he couldn't compare to his senior sister. He heard that his senior sister helped to concoct simple medicinal herbs when she was 2 or 3, and she helped to fill the prescription when she was 4. Other people needed to learn for a year, but his senior sister learned for half a month until now. He was too far behind, so how could he catch up? Would his senior sister stop and wait? The only thing he could be thankful for was that he had a lot of resources. When other people fell ill, the imperial physicians would take their pulse, and he would help. His master also had an electronic pulse that simulated all kinds of pulse conditions. Different ages, gender, special diseases. It was too difficult to learn medicine by taking the pulse and asking about the illness. Currently, he hadn't come into contact with the learning system for infants. Children would cry if they couldn't tell, or they were feeling uncomfortable. Take the pulse first, then use the instrument to compare and remember the situation. People who learned medicine elsewhere didn't have such treatment. Don't ask, I really don't know how to do it. The little lass was chatting happily. She liked to listen to Mrs. Guanteng and Mrs. Guanluo talk about how to use poison. When using poison to treat illnesses, the two of them talked about some of the methods and dosage that were particularly bold. It felt like they weren't trying to save people, but to poison them to death. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.